We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
I mean, what's that football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We are live here on YouTube, 7 a.m. on a Monday morning, ready to review a wild Week 15 in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I feel like we talk it up. You know, there's a lot of surprises every single week, but this has to take the cake, right? This weekend?
This weekend was nuts.
It was.
Like, absurd, ridiculous, madness.
You have Rich Eisen out there saying he's been doing this for years, many years, and he can't remember a weekend quite like this. Now, I would say last year's divisional round weekend was,
That was just really good as opposed to nuts.
Okay, so it's more just this was
craziness.
Yeah, it was craziness everywhere, and we had 15 games. So let's get into it. Let's get into the.
How'd you
crazy
go
week
with your
15.
picks?
I got about 3 wins so far.
3
1 to go.
out of 15.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll stick to. My season's kind of in line with the Bucs season. Previously good. I used to be good at this whole thing, and every time you think I'm going to get out of it, you go 3-12.
Yeah, I mean, this was just a week for the people are picking well against the spread. Maybe we're gaining on you. Slap them right
I'm
down.
going to go. If I go 0 picks next week, maybe that'll sneak into some wins. All right, let's just get in. Nobody cares about my picks. We got to talk Thursday Night Football. San Francisco 49ers and Seattle Seahawks. This was ages ago.
Yeah.
But the Niners win. They moved to 10-4. Did they officially win the NFC West?
Yep.
With this game?
They definitely made the playoffs, right? I don't know if that was clinching the division.
Okay, quick pet peeve. I don't care about teams clinching the playoffs in Week 15. They're all competing for the number 1 seed. Like, the number of times that I heard that the Bills made the playoffs on Saturday night.
They did clinch the division.
When their goal, Buffalo, is to have the number 1 seed, not to get in the playoffs. Look, I know it's a story in Buffalo and they make the playoffs after all those years, but it's not a story anymore. Stop it.
Okay.
Let's talk about
They did win the division, though, as well.
Congrats to the 49ers. Brock Purdy looking solid again, but I think it was another game where the 49ers playmakers took over, even without Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey at one point had like 80% of their touches, and the Niners defense was good again, and it was just the Niners being good.
Yeah, I mean, the playmakers and the defense in particular. The Geno Smith thing, like, it's not turning back into a pumpkin, but it's definitely cooled from when he was, playing genuinely insane. Now, okay, it's always going to cool down a little bit when you're getting your ass kicked by the likes of Nick Bosa, et cetera. But, we've seen for a little while now that Geno hasn't quite been hitting the heights that he hit earlier in the season. And, if the 49ers are just too good across the board, if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, Nick Bosa with a huge game. Niners defense, just fantastic. Bosa, did he have 3 sacks? I mean, Bosa, the debate with him and Micah Parsons and, the entire Defensive Player of the Year conversation, that was a good game for Nick Bosa.
They both helped themselves this week.
Yes. Are you going to be can you announce anything yet on that?
Sure. What the hell?
You get to vote this year.
I will be an all-pro voter this year and a awards voter, the MVP, the award I love so much, and the Defensive Player of the Year, et cetera.
You should probably stop trashing the MVP award that you're voting for. They'll strip you right.
Well, I can bring some logic to the equation now. I can at least vote along the lines that it should be, not along the lines that people try and make it.
And you're new. You're here. You get to vote in the first year we have a top 5.
Yeah. We've overhaul the system a little bit. There's going to be, instead of just voting for, all pro, and then having second team guys be given off the base of like the one lone lunatic that didn't vote for that guy. It's going to be like preference. It's like a European election system, like number 1, number 2, number 3 preferences, and then
it's like
it'll be done
every other MVP voting too.
Well, that too.
Yeah. So congrats to you. I feel like it's not so much you; it's you represents the PFF NFL podcast
Absolutely.
vote. So it's our vote.
I'd be nowhere without this podcast.
Right. So it's our vote. And maybe we'll let the fans vote. Well, that's a good way to lose it. It's a good way to lose your vote too.
Immediately, 1 year and done.
We should do like a little survey thing that could be like 10% of your vote or something. We'll bake it in. So maybe you'll vote for Nick Bosa. Never know. So I don't even remember what happened in this game other than Christian McCaffrey ran pretty well.
Honestly, given the things we need to get to this game, this week, this game is relatively inconsequential. The 49ers won. They were the better team. They fairly well handled Seattle. Brock Purdy still looked good. Geno Smith didn't look as good. The 49ers won the division. It's done. It's wrapped. Now let's get on to insane games.
Oh, you should be the host. This is great. Full disclosure here, which, again, a lot of people listen to the podcast by skipping around. Even Mina admitted, I skip to the games I want to listen to, right? So maybe somebody's going to miss this. But full disclosure, we're going to talk about some games more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when we get to Denver and Arizona, it might be quick.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you're a fan of those teams,
sorry,
you probably want it to be quick.
Sure.
Right? You want to spin it forward to the draft? We could do that at some point. But anyway, all right, let's get to Saturday. Minnesota beats the Colts 39-36. A pretty simple game right there.
Yeah.
39-36. The biggest comeback in NFL history. Colts were up 33-0 at one point. Also, full disclosure, I wasn't watching this game live in the first half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were doing what?
I was at a Christmas event in an elf costume.
In an elf costume. Huh?
Yeah.
It did, the kind of famous picture of Buddy the Elf in the classroom, when he's 17 times larger than everybody else. You're sort of naturally like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
May have replicated that as well.
It works pretty well.
It's
good.
On Twitter.
Uh-huh.
But I was trying to, so I was at a Christmas event. I'm getting updates from you, hearing all the ridiculousness. Of course, I circled back and, caught the game and all that stuff. But at the time, I'm just getting these updates from you about what is happening. How did the Colts get up 33-0, and then how did they blow it?
It's just absurd, this game. It was genuinely the most ridiculous game that's ever happened in NFL history. Forget the largest comeback ever, blah, blah, blah. The first half could not have gone worse for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, absolute perfect storm of things going to hell. The Colts were up 33-0 with one offensive touchdown. Like, they weren't playing particularly well. The Vikings were just imploding. They got down in a hurry, and then it was like, so you remember the two things that it reminded me of. I actually got Tyler to clip this thing because I thought, oh, well, the story of this game is just the Vikings going from one disaster to the next and then completely disaster. And it reminded me of the immortal words of Shane Falco from The Replacements, where they had this team meeting and a conversation about what terrified them. He was like, quicksand. And they all thought he was talking about the actual literal quicksand. And then fire it up, Tyler. Why not? We clipped it. We might as well actually play it.
You're playing, and you think everything is going fine, but then one thing goes wrong, and then another, and another. And you try to fight back, but the harder you fight, the deeper you sink, till you can't move. You can't breathe, because you're in over your head, like quicksand.
So it was that, and then the other thing it reminded me of was, remember Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes? Just ka-dang, ka-dang. Like, they couldn't move without stepping on a rake. And it was like, I kept thinking, that idea that momentum doesn't exist, or at least you can't measure it statistically, right? This idea of something that's already happened in a football game seems to have no provable bearing on what's about to happen. So theoretically, momentum just isn't a factor in football. And yet, that analytics staffer's kind of questionnaire that, is it Brian Burke from ESPN does this every year, where he emails it out to all the NFL analytics people, and they get, these sort of surveys.
Seth Walder's been doing it recently.
Maybe it's Seth Walder, sorry. But one of the they asked them, does momentum exist? and a surprisingly large proportion of actual analytics people, the guys that have proven effectively that it doesn't, say yes. And they all say things like, look, I can't find a way to measure it, but there's something there. And it's like, this is a game that's very difficult to explain away if you're of the opinion that it doesn't exist. Because this game, like, one thing went wrong, like the quicksand thing. One thing went wrong, and then another and another and another just spiraled into hell in the space of a half. It's like, well, if momentum doesn't exist, what the hell happened to the Vikings in the first half?
I mean, the argument against it is if momentum existed, how could the Vikings, after everything went wrong in the first half, how could they ever even regain it? How could they?
You get to halftime.
Halftime cut
breaks
it up.
Momentum.
Halftime changed it. Because that's what happened in the Bengals-Bucs game,
But this was like a game of momentum, right? The first half, one thing went wrong, and then quicksand happened. It spiraled to a disaster, and the Vikings were 33-0 down before they get to the half, and they're just like, what? Just shell-shocked.
But to me, that's just
and then you
like
get out of the half, you start the comeback, and all of a sudden, woof, momentum swings back in the opposite direction, and now the Colts can't do anything right on offense. Minnesota's just scoring at will, despite not even, getting everything right, and it's just coming back and coming back and coming back. And pretty early on, you're like, this game isn't dead.
I mean, when the Vikings were down 17-0, 20-0, it's like, it's the Vikings. They'll come back. There's some freak stuff in there. The Colts offense had, one offensive touchdown?
Yeah.
In that 33 points, you have a pick six. So you have a blocked kick for a touchdown, blocked punt for a touchdown. You have
a failed fourth down conversion. They tried to sneak one, right? Then they tried to fake punt.
2 failed fourth down conversions.
Right. So 2, because they're already in a hole, right? So all of a sudden you're like, oh man, we got to push. We got to try and dig out of this. And every time you try and dig, you make it worse.
You just before we got on the air, you read a list of all the things that went wrong for the Vikings.
This wasn't even the things that went wrong. This was like,
or what the Colts did well.
Yeah, not even. Yeah, just good stats from the Colts defense. So the Colts defense had 7 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 11 quarterback hits, 10 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, 2 defensive or special teams touchdowns, and forced the Vikings to go 0 for 3 on fourth down, and not only lost the game, but allowed 39 points.
That's the thing that was nuts in this whole thing, right? So it's 33-0.
That was a tweet from Luke Inman, by the way.
So that was what was crazy about this game, right? Like, I think you're thinking, well, the Vikings have done this before, not at the level of 33 points,
right,
but
because nobody's done that before.
Just to touch on the momentum thing quickly, I think what happens though, the way this is explained away is in football games, it's like if all of that stuff, all of the stuff that happened, and it was just back and forth. The Colts did some stuff, and the Vikings did some stuff. If all the same things happened but in different order,
sure, it's
not crazy,
right?
And this is just like a, regression to the mean when you go from 33-0 to, okay, now the Vikings get theirs. It all happened in a row. That's what's tough about it. By the way, I love the symmetry of the Colts giving up 33 points in the fourth quarter of the Cowboys, which was the last game that we saw them, and then getting to a point differential of 0 by going 33-0 to get out. Like, there was a point where that symmetry also is just ridiculous. Like, how does that happen?
Also in this game, by the way, the officials screwed Minnesota out of 2 fumble recovery touchdowns, right? Like, okay, the first one might have actually been legit, but the second one, they actually got hosed because that was a forced fumble. The guy scooped and scored, and they claimed he was down, right? Like, they took it off they took it off the board, and then on review, you can only give them the fumble back. You can't give them the score, the recovery
touchdown
and score, because you blew it early. So, like, Minnesota absolutely got screwed out of, like, at one point, they're executing the largest comeback in NFL history. Like, are they going to get it done or not? Like, they should be up 7 because they got a touchdown taken off the board.
I don't understand. This was like never-ending possessions too, because the entire time in the fourth quarter, I feel like you're expecting the Vikings to kind of make a move here at some point. It's like, all right, they could do it, right? And you're thinking about how can they pull this off? But even in the fourth quarter, they still had a Kirk Cousins interception. Again, Jalen Reagor's fault on 2 of them, on both. They had a Kirk Cousins interception in one of those failed fourth downs. How did they have enough time to do that? And by that time, it's 36-14 going into the fourth quarter. They still scored 3 touchdowns, got the 2-point conversion to tie it up and get to 36. And they had time to win it, too. Like, where did these possessions come from?
Yeah, like, the Vikings needed whatever it was, 5 touchdowns, and they scored them with an average drive time of like 2 minutes and 7 seconds or something. The efficiency, not even efficiency, because it's not like they did it particularly smoothly. It was, herky jerky. It's like a guy trying to drive stick that's never done it before, with a clutch, and she's like, that was the Vikings offense the whole way. But it didn't take a lot of time, so they were able to get it done. Roger Sherman of The Ringer had a good tweet.
He's got a couple good ones this weekend.
Which was, Jeff Saturday has been a coach for a month and already has 2 record-setting losses. The biggest blown lead ever, this one, 33 points against Minnesota, and the worst fourth-quarter scoring margin ever, 33 points against Dallas. So the Colts essentially asked, what's the worst that could happen if we hired a random guy as a coach and found out in a hurry?
What is Jim Irsay thinking? Like, hey, good for the draft pick? Or like, wow.
I mean, there's a pretty good chance that Jim Irsay just hit the booze at halftime and never even saw it.
Don't go there.
NFL history, by the way, teams leading by a 30 or more points differential were 1,548, 1-1 since 1930.
Somebody also mentioned that they fired Frank Reich and knocked him out of the record books all in the same season.
Yeah, that's true.
He had the 32-point comeback against the Houston Oilers in the playoffs. That was the AFC Championship, right?
Yes.
Was it 35-3 at one point?
It was, 32-point comeback.
32-point comeback. This was a 33-point comeback. The play that tied it up, Dalvin Cook weaving through the defense for 64 yards. I mean, again, as that play is unfolding, it's just like the Vikings are going to do this, huh? They're going to do this. And then the Vikings have a history of maybe disappointing their fans a little bit. So I assume that the average Vikings fan is like, it's 36-34. This is a good story, but we still need that 2-point conversion. It would be very Vikings to not get the 2-point conversion after all of that, after all that emotional investment. This is a new Vikings team here, Sam. This is Kirk Cousins-led Vikings. They make the most ridiculous comebacks in NFL history, and they get the 2-point conversion. It's 36-36. That was a 13-second drive, by the way, for the game-tying touchdown and 2-point conversion. And they still had time.
There was still 2 minutes left on the clock.
They still had time to – they still got the ball back for a fourth-quarter comeback attempt.
Like the Colts start off a drive with Minnesota having tied it up with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. They're like they go 1st and 10. They get sacked immediately. So now you're 2nd and 18. You're like, all right, they're probably just trying to chew the clock. They get a big play and almost convert the 3rd down. Like they get a pass to Michael Pittman, and as soon as he caught the ball, I'm like, oh, he's getting it. He's converting this. And then Duke Shelley comes up and hits him. Duke Shelley had a couple of big plays in this game. Again, he's had a few throughout the season, like really high leverage plays. Again, the Minnesota Vikings defense generally has been garbage, but Duke Shelley has timed up a few really important plays for them this season, which is how they have such an absurd record on one possession or one score games. Hits him dead and stops him a yard short, and then it's 4th and 1. They get a false start, and then they have to punt it away. So Minnesota gets the ball back with a minute left. You're like, maybe they could steal it in regulation, and then eventually, it ends up going to overtime.
Goes to overtime. Both teams have possessions. I mean, we can't cover all of the plays here and all of the various things, but
they won it with 7 seconds left on the clock in overtime.
Just out of control. Minnesota was electric. They moved to 11-3. At this point in the season, a lot of my questions today in Week 15 is like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What does this mean?
I mean, what does that game mean at all? Ever? It's nuts.
So it was awesome to see. It's NFL history, but like, what do you do with this? The Vikings moved to 11-3. They're closer and closer to that number 2 seed in the NFL, in the NFC. We keep talking about their point differential, and they're the worst 11-3 team we've ever seen, and all this stuff. But at some point, it's like they're doing something, right? They're doing something with these comebacks where. Can they carry this into the playoffs? Are they going to have a game against the Eagles where they make this ridiculous fourth-quarter comeback, or against the Cowboys or someone? I mean, in the playoffs.
I don't know. I don't know what you can take out of this game. It was nuts. Like, the story of this game is just to retell the story of the game and be like, what the hell happened? But
from both sides.
Yeah, but it does show you that, whatever Minnesota is this season, which I think the first half probably shows is dramatically worse than their overall record, it means that when you get to the playoffs, anything is possible. Anything is on the table for this team because they can be buried and still go on a run of putting up a ton of points and making crazy things happen and make a weird game out of it. So the fact that their defense is garbage and they're very inconsistent and they're overachieving and all these things are probably true, but it doesn't mean that in a one-off game against a better team, they can't do something crazy because like we just saw it.
I don't, but I think the point of this is when you're down 33-0, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad team. I mean, this is the fine line of football, right? There are blowouts in the NFL where if you just take away 2 or 3 plays, right? Just for perspective purposes, they count, right? But you take away 2 or 3 plays, and it's not close to what perception was.
Yeah, this
this was weird stuff.
Yes,
that doesn't always happen. These are outlier plays.
The first half was not about how bad Minnesota is. It was about how quickly a game of NFL football can spiral completely out of your control through, the quicksand or the Sideshow Bob's kadang, like that stuff. Like it went so fast from, well, they scored first to what the hell just happened to us. Not because Minnesota sucks, but because 3 or 4 plays bouncing in a weird direction immediately puts the other team several scores in the lead. Like those high leverage plays on 4th down. If you screw up those things, the interception because the guy ran to the wrong place, the fumble, like all those things. If they just sequentially go against you, you're immediately in a giant hole and it looks like the game is dead and buried.
That was the point I wanted to make, was the 4th down plays, right? We're in a year where the games are closer than ever. It seems like they're crazier than ever and all this stuff. The 4th down decision maker, the willingness to go for it on 4th down, we always talk about it through the lens of win probability added, right? Go for it on 4th down because it's going to increase your chances of winning. The part that we don't talk about as much is the failed 4th down decreases your chances of winning more than a punt, right? So it might be on the surface a better decision to go for it, but when it fails, it is worse for you than the punt, right?
Sure.
And to me, that's what creates a ton of variance as well, right? There was a game last year where the Chargers kept going for it on 4th, and they failed, and they got blown out by the Ravens. And the game wasn't as bad as it seemed, but when you keep handing the ball over in your own territory. I mean, that was the Vikings in this, right? A failed 4th down and
They were both
failed
from the same
punt.
spot. They were both from the Minnesota 31-yard line. So it's like, okay, not only is going for it on 4th down a big high-leverage play, but if you're doing it in your own 31, if you screw them up, you're setting the opposition up in a really good spot. And again,
the Colts had a drive that was 4 plays for 0 yards that led to a field goal.
Right. Again, the other point about this is it's, on the one hand, go for it, yes or no. On the other hand, what is your play call to go for it on 4th down? I'm going to keep coming back to this every week, but like the NFL, largely the Eagles, but it's not like other teams aren't doing it. The NFL has discovered a cheat code for 4th and 3rd and short, and yet the Vikings are running halfback dives up the middle on 4th down. Like, what are you doing? The league has shown you the way of securing an almost guaranteed 4th down conversion, and you are running like I formation up the middle from the 1980s. Like, that's just it's a bad play call in today's NFL. You can't, if they're stacking up the A-gaps to try and stop the sneak, you're not going to have a more successful chance of getting it by giving it to the running back with a 5-yard head of steam to try and get it. So that's a bad play call, and it was punished. And then the fake punt, and it was one of those fake punts where it didn't look like they were reacting to a specific look, where a team has shown them something, it's wide the hell open, you take the free yards because it's there. It's like, no, we decided to fake because we're in a hole and we need to get something out of it, so we're just going to let the punter attempt to pass. It's like, so going for it on 4th down is one thing, but then what are the play calls you're dialing up to go for it on those 4th downs? That's the other element.
As part of the comeback, Kirk Cousins made a ton of big throws. KJ Osborne running through the defense had a 63-yarder, also had a touchdown. Justin Jefferson had an awesome battle with Stephon Gilmore, unbelievable route on his touchdown. We mentioned Dalvin Cook weaving through the defense. The team building stuff that we talk about all the time, it feels like just throw it out the window because how do you even predict any of this stuff? I can't predict it. But there was a point where the Vikings have some pretty good playmakers. Osborne's shown flashes over the last couple of years. Their playmakers just kind of took over, made some big plays, and got them back into it. Just want to give them proper credit, too. We could talk about this game for hours. Did we cover it enough?
It's also, I mean,
people
are complaining about Kirk Cousins' grade. Like, Cousins didn't do that much in this game he didn't start driving this comeback with a bunch of big-time throws and amazing play and stuff. Like, Dalvin Cook has like 100 yards, essentially all of which came after contact, or not after the catch. Justin Jefferson's route for his touchdown, like he smoked Gilmore. Okay, Cousins put it where it should be, but it was, that's not a really impressive pass as much as an incredible route that got him wide the hell open. I think it's fair to say that the interceptions were more Rager than they were Cousins. But this was a lot high volume, average play, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, credit him for the comeback, and the quarterback has their hand in all that stuff. It doesn't always show up in the grading. And remember, just as well as the Vikings played in the first half, in the second half, it was a bad first half across the board. All right, so Vikings move to 11-3. Colts fall to 4-9-1. NFL history is set. The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by the Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. So go check that out, westernsouthern.com/PFF. And shout out to Western and Southern studio here in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Second Saturday game. We're not giving this one as much love. 13-3. Browns win. They move to 6-8. Ravens fall to 9-5. The fourth down variant stuff that we had talked about, you saw a little bit of that, right? Like the Ravens scored 3 points, and the passing game was not good from their perspective, but they were moving the ball on the ground. And then they get stuffed on 4th and 1 in the red zone. Tyler Huntley throws a red zone interception, and it feels like, wow, the Ravens just can't score. But they were moving the ball, and that's where some of like that fourth down variance, you got a Justin Tucker missed field goal in there, and it's like all that variance adds up. You score 3 points.
Well, this game also undid your master plan of the constant football. The weekend where there's just a game followed by a game, followed by a game, followed by a game until you're dead. So this was supposed to be the 3 straight games on Saturday, the Vikings game, then the Browns game, then the Bills.
No, this is how you do it. This is
so
good.
Like one of the most important plays in this game happened while everybody else was stuck watching the Vikings in overtime execute this comeback. The Cleveland Browns got a key 4th down stop on a Ravens drive that nobody saw because we're still watching the other game that's going to the death at overtime.
That's the NFL's fault for only allowing NFL Network to play the games.
Yeah, so unless you were like in Cleveland or Baltimore,
you
didn't see that unless you went back and watched it.
Well, they need to figure out how they're going to do this. Yeah. But this was perfect, right? If you're going to do Island Game Weekend, which is, one game nonstop, first off, don't have prior engagements where you're Buddy the Elf.
True.
Secondly, this is what you want, right? You want the high of that first game, and then you want to come back down a little bit.
It's like Thanksgiving. You need one of the games has to suck, otherwise it's too much.
Yes, this middle game being a nice 13-3 affair.
Yeah.
In the middle of it, and then crescendoing up into the snow game that wasn't until the fourth quarter in Buffalo and Miami. That's perfect setup. Again, I don't think there's much here. The Ravens, if you told me the Ravens were going to run for 7 yards per carry, I'd say, all right. It was probably part of my analysis that I got wrong, was that the Ravens were going to run all over the Browns and were going to cover and they were going to be fine. My big takeaway, though, is that the Ravens certainly missed Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, right? Unlike last year where there wasn't a big drop-off between Lamar and Tyler Huntley when he came in, and then even Josh Johnson when he came in, there's been a big one this year. Like, Tyler Huntley hasn't played as well as he did last year. It's different when Tyler Huntley has been the quarterback this season. Myles Garrett started to really cook in the fourth quarter when the Ravens started to kind of need it in the game. Garrett came up big in a couple of key plays late on. And honestly, that was kind of the difference. Like, they got the 4th down stop early in the game. Myles Garrett started to hum as the game went on. And it was such a low-scoring game. That was kind of it.
It was 6-3 at the half. Cleveland, Justin Tucker missed a field goal. The Browns put the
Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals in a game.
2 field goals. Sorry,
in a game.
That's crazy.
For the first time in like 5 years.
Everything falling apart for Baltimore here.
Denzel Ward had his best game of the year.
The only touchdown, Deshaun Watson hits Donovan Peoples-Jones, 3-yard touchdown. That made it 13-3, and that was in the third quarter, and that was it. Ravens didn't have like I said, the pass game just was not there with Tyler Huntley, but Gus Edwards, big power back, J.K. Dobbins adding some quicks and some speed was good. All that was good, but the Ravens could not put points on the board, and I think when you don't have Lamar as the cheat code, not only is it harder on 4th and 1, not that they wouldn't have run a fullback dive or something with Lamar. You just always have to account for Lamar more than you have to account for Tyler Huntley. And they're pretty successful with Lamar Jackson on 4th and short. And even just having him in for that is a game changer for the Ravens. So big takeaways here. Still probably too little too late for the Browns, moving to 6-8, but their defense is looking better. They've got elements of improvement during the second half on that side of the ball. Watson's looking a little bit better, and the Ravens really miss Lamar. And that's it. Ravens are going to fall out of first place this weekend.
They dropped from they dropped quite a bit, right?
They were probably, the 3rd seed?
I think at one point, no, because Miami lost. But at one point, like if Miami had won, they would have dropped all the way to 6 or something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, three games left. When's Lamar going to come back? He's day to day to week to season here.
Okay.
So we don't know.
Solid.
But they need him back sooner rather than later. All right, that's it on that game.
Yep.
Buffalo 32, Miami 29. Supposed to be the Snow Bowl. Didn't snow till the 4th quarter.
Cheated.
Would have been so much better. The snow came down.
There's like piles of snow sitting in the stands. They clean the stadium or the turf, the field, really quickly. But who's got time to clear the bleachers? So there's just piles of snow in the stands that people are then hurling onto the field, to the point where they had to pause the game at one stage and be like, guys, stop throwing all the snowballs at the Miami players. And then the video people, the cameramen. Yeah, one of them took a belter right in the spine.
Yeah.
It feels
He's
a
got
bit
a big
harsh.
puffy jacket, which probably protected him.
Yeah, that'll insulate a bit. Poor old Steve Smith freezing his ass off on the sideline. His little, the desk they have set up there.
It looks cold.
Didn't look fun.
It looks cold over there.
Josh Allen at the end of the game, they park him, for the post-game interview. Like, somebody get the guy the big over-the-shoulder parka thing. He's just sitting there.
He's fine.
Shivering. Like, he's sitting there visibly
he wasn't that
shivering.
cold, was he?
Yeah. I mean, he's, Josh Allen, he's giant, and he's a Buffalo superstar, so he's not going to say anything. But, he was, I'm pretty sure, visibly shivering at the end of that. And it's like these guys, Steve Smith out here dressed for an Arctic expedition, and they just park Josh Allen in the seat. And it's like, somebody get the man the parka. Come on. Help the guy out.
It was so a lot of stuff to unpack here. I thought Miami hung tough, right? I mean, the narrative coming in was, warm weather team, and they can't play in the conditions. And they hung tough, right? They ran the ball really well. Raheem Mostert averaged 8 yards per carry, had a 67-yarder in there. Miami ran the ball extremely well. It's actually one of those games I felt like they got away from it a little bit too much.
They did. So they ran the ball really well, particularly in the first half. And then where did it go? Like Mostert had 17 carries in the game, 11 of which happened in the first half. He had 100 yards. Did he have 100 yards in the first quarter? But yeah, 100 yards in the first. 8 of the 17 carries came in the first quarter, which yielded 101 rushing yards.
Yeah.
And then they just stopped doing it.
Even Salvin Ahmed found the end zone. They were winning up front, Miami. Their offensive line was winning up front against Buffalo. It was kind of like, if there's a weakness on Buffalo over the Sean McDermott era, pretty much, is there are games where they will get absolutely destroyed on the ground. And it looked like one of those games, and it was, not that you have to play like that in December just because it's cold, but it's one of those games where it's working, and you probably should have stuck with it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Miami still created some chunk plays in the pass game, 2 long touchdowns where Jalen Waddle and just outspeeded everybody, right?
The blueprint to stop this Miami offense, it was interesting because Buffalo didn't really use it. It was like, okay, I see your blueprint. I like that. It works. Good for you. We're going to go what we do because we think it works as well. So they were running kind of their regular defense. They weren't doing the kind of aggressive press man stuff and funneling everything into the middle and then pouncing on those plays over the middle that the 49ers and the Chargers were doing. They were just kind of running their offense, or running their defense rather, and it was still doing a pretty good job other than, Mostert going beast mode in the first quarter and stuff. So I just thought it was kind of fascinating that the Bills saw what I do think is a pretty clear game plan of stopping this offense and went, not for us.
That's how Buffalo plays defense, though. They don't adjust a ton. So I thought Tua's grade's not going to be as good as perception. Remember, we had the 2 long touchdowns, a Waddle deep ball that was a little underthrown, probably hits him in stride. It's a touchdown. The Waddle deep crosser for 67 yards, where it's a really bad safety play as much as it is. Well, it was a good throw by Tua, and Waddle just turns on the jets, outruns everybody. But that should not probably have been a touchdown if it wasn't for Waddle. Tua fumbled in the red zone that got recovered. They kicked a field goal after that, and he left one back and inside on an out route that just got knocked down and could have been a pick six. It was pretty bad. I don't think Tua played maybe even as bad as the grade showed. It was really a couple plays that kind of crushed him there. But I was impressed by Miami. Like a lot of people's takeaway was like, Bills win, but impressed by the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair takeaway, right? They hung tough with the Bills
in
playoff weather and still showed that they could put points on the board. I think that's good overall for the Dolphins.
Yeah. When you look at what Miami have done this season in 2 games against Buffalo, who, let's remember, were supposed to be the best team by a distance in the NFL generally this year, are still shooting for that number 1 overall seed in the AFC and are still, one of the Super Bowl favorites. Miami have a points differential of -1 across 2 games against Buffalo and split the series. That's a pretty good performance overall, wouldn't you say? When you can, given what Buffalo is supposed to be, that's probably about as good as you could expect to work for Miami, particularly when, they essentially split the series in terms of weather as well, right? Like Miami, baking hot conditions probably worked in their favor. Buffalo, freezing cold and snow has to work in Buffalo's favor. So overall, big picture, I think the 2 games against the Bills, this went reasonably well for Miami. I thought Tre'Davious White had a really good game. It's not necessarily going to get reflected in the grading because
we got whooped on the touchdown.
Yes, because
the Tyreek Hill touchdown.
Because in that really good game, you switch off one play. That's the Tyreek Hill thing, right? Like you can have this. It's like a few years ago when he went 1-on-1 with Jalen Ramsey, and Ramsey kind of took him out of the game, and then one play, you switch off and blip, you're dead. Like that's all it takes. So Tre'Davious White, I thought, had a great game. Gave up like 3 catches on 9 targets, something like that. Was right at the catch point a bunch of times. And then Tyreek Hill just like runs right by him on one play. He just can't get his hands on him. As soon as you don't get your hands on him, you can't run as fast as he does, and you're just done. And if the ball is accurate, you're dog meat. So unfortunately for him, his grade is going to get torpedoed by the one really big high leverage play that he coughed up. But generally, when you consider what he's coming back from, like this was the game that showed, hey, Tre'Davious White's back, and that's a pretty big thing for this Buffalo defense.
But that's why what you're talking about, the blueprint, which was, press and throw off the timing and all that stuff, they tried on that one play with Tre'Davious White. They tried, and Tyreek Hill's destroyed press coverage most of the time in his career.
He's just so
it's
dangerous.
Scary.
Like, he's so lethal because all it takes is one play. Like, even the games with the blueprint, like Tyreek Hill still had a huge play, and that was the difference. You know what I mean? They're so lethal because he's so fast, he's so quick, and he's so good at the catch point, which is the thing that I think makes it so dangerous. Because as much as, okay, if the ball is accurate, it's immediate. But even if the ball isn't accurate, Tyreek Hill can go up and get it and adjust and make a play in a way that some other speed receivers deep down the field just don't do. Tyreek Hill is incredible at the catch point, which makes so many of these big plays. The other thing I think we need to at least mention in this game is obviously Josh Allen. Like when they get to 2-minute situations or, those high leverage plays. There are just so many things that you have to defend with Josh Allen, and you almost just run out of things that you're capable of stopping. Like, he's going to find the thing that you're not paying attention to on that given play call, whether it's the quarterback running, whether it's, the scramble out of the pocket, whether it's the absurd deep, bomb down the field. Like, he's just going to find the thing. Him, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, sometimes to a lesser degree, these like super freak quarterbacks just bring so much to the table that you can't stop all of it. It's too hard.
Yeah. So there was a lot to discuss with Josh Allen, because it was another one of those games where who knows what's going to happen on any given play with Josh Allen. Good, bad, indifferent, right? So the game starts, Allen's all over the place, throwing the ball all over the place, right? Friend of the show, Nick Wright, of course, always takes an opportunity to take a shot at Josh Allen. He's like, he's throwing to 10-foot receivers. And he was right. Like, his accuracy was way off early on. Throws one right through Javon Holland's hands in the secondary, turnover-worthy play. And then the next drive, there's like three quick passes and Buffalo scores, 2 of which are incredible, right? So as soon as you want to have like a narrative, Allen's accuracy's off tonight or whatever it is. Nope, next drive, he's tearing it up. The play just before the half.
Yeah.
They have 8 seconds left, whatever it was on the clock.
8, yeah.
And the usual play here is you snap it. If somebody's open in the end zone, you throw it. If not, you throw it away. You kick the field goal. You're happy.
So they're up by 1 at the Miami, 4-yard line with 8 seconds on the clock.
Yes.
Like,
this is common quarterback play, right?
Yeah.
You have one quick read. If it's open, you throw it. If it's not, you throw it away, take the field goal, go into the locker room. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen decides to scramble to the right and run out the clock on the entire play.
Right, so at the point he decides to bail from the pocket, he has effectively, consciously or not, made the determination that now I actually need to make the play, otherwise we're getting no points from this. I've passed up an almost guaranteed 3 points to do whatever the hell it is I'm just doing right now. And at the point he does that, nothing's open because he's just blown the play to hell.
Right.
So now he's running to the right field with no plan. Just the plan being, I need to find something, otherwise I just blew 3 points. And then he does. He finds an
open throw that wasn't, right? He finds James Cook for a 4-yard touchdown. So that put Buffalo up 8 going into halftime.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, they're going to pull away. Miami comes back, though. That's where the 67-yarder from Jalen Waddle comes in. They don't get the 2. They're up 2. Buffalo has a key roughing the kicker on a punt, right? They force a punt. They rough the kicker. Dolphins come back. Tua hits Tyreek with that touchdown. It's 26-21. And then again, the Josh Allen experience. He gets sacked and fumbles.
Huge strip sack from Jalen Phillips, right?
Jalen Phillips gets it. And again, this was like, we talk about strip sacks. I not just because we do this from a grading standpoint from PFF. There are some that you can avoid. There are some where you have to have the internal clock. Allen holds the ball way too long. So the roller coaster of Josh Allen emotions are all over the place again, right? Because he gets sacked, loses the ball, basically hands Miami 3 more points. And Miami goes up 29-21. But then, like, Allen doesn't give up, dude. I mean, he always has these big plays in him. He's got a 44-yard run on the next drive. So this is what you're saying, right? How do you stop this guy?
Yeah.
There are obviously passes that are indefensible because he's got a cannon for an arm and he's accurate down the field. There's the running ability on pass plays, also like the 44-yarder. There's the running ability on designed runs. But they end up, Buffalo scores a touchdown. They go for 2. He does the Superman over the line for a touchdown, which was another whole glass case of emotions there. He barely gets it over and fumbles, but it's the game-tying 2-point conversion. Yeah,
Jalen Phillips, another great game in what is turning out to be a great season for him for the second-year defensive lineman there. Like Josh Allen, I think just brings too many things to the table where he will make you wrong even when you're right on the chalkboard. This idea of like you draw up a play, here's what we're playing, this is the coverage that stops, or this is the defensive play call that stops everything they want to do on offense. And he makes too many plays that are right on the chalkboard wrong because he's just better than you are. And he does it, and Mahomes does it. Again, like this small group of hyper-talented quarterbacks are just able to invalidate whatever it is you called on defense, even when you call it right. Like, that's what makes these guys so special, is there are quarterbacks out there where when you get the right play call at the right time, you win because you took away everything they want to do. Then there's these groups of quarterbacks where even when you get it right, they'll just go, okay, plan B. And plan B is ad lib. And when they ad lib, they're just going to do something that you can't stop because they're freaks. And Allen is one of those guys. And as long as he just comes down on the right side of the sort of the high variance right now, which is I'm going to make some bad plays and I'm going to make some insanely unstoppable plays. As long as he hits the high leverage ones, at the right time, or the unstoppable ones, they're unstoppable. They win. Like, that's what we're looking at with Josh Allen right now.
Yes. That's in when the game's on the line, right? We have these games where when you go back through the stat sheet, and it's another one of those where Allen is the leading rusher, right? Yeah. You got that 44-yarder in there, but even then, he ends up with 10 for 77 plus the 2-point conversion on the ground, while also throwing the ball well. 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. Yes, there was a couple turnover-worthy plays in there, but when Josh Allen came into the league, I think you expected some level of that variance. I think
sure.
None of us we didn't expect the good to be as good as it is. But if you said, hey, Josh Allen's going to have games with 4 or 5 big-time throws, multiple turnover-worthy plays, hey, that's part of the experience, right? But, man, you just want the ball in his hands when the game's on the line. Mm-hmm. Showed it again. So Buffalo wins with game-winning field goal, 32-29. Like we said earlier, there was supposed to be this lake effect snow. It was merely just a cold game with good conditions until the fourth quarter. Then it started snowing. You get wasn't full winter wonderland, but it was getting there. It was accumulating quickly.
Yeah.
Would have been more fun if we had that the entire time. But
and again, like zooming out big picture, like the last few weeks have been rough for Miami, but I think they're showing that maybe they're not the team that you don't want to play in the postseason, but I still think they're a legit threat to anybody in the AFC.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, the narrative is probably too much, like, oh, this team from Florida is going to come up north and lose by 1 million. Like, it doesn't usually happen that way. But there's something to be said for going head-to-head in playoff weather in Buffalo. So Miami, who are they going to run into in the playoffs potentially? Cincinnati or Buffalo or Kansas City or whatever. We could absolutely see them, especially against Kansas City's defense, if they have to go to Kansas City, can absolutely give them a game. And while Miami, by the way, absolutely depleted at safety and in the secondary and everything, they were hanging tough.
They didn't have a starting safety they didn't have a safety at one point in this game.
Yes.
Javon Holland goes down hurt. They were already without a starter. Like, all of a sudden they're playing like backup corners at safety.
Their defense is inconsistent, in part due to all of the injuries that they have. So, anyway, it was a good game. That was Saturday. We have to get to Sunday now.
Okay.
There was only 6 games at 1 o'clock.
True.
But first, the gauntlet is open for drafting on Underdog Fantasy. It's a playoff best ball tournament with $1 million in total prizes and $100,000 for a first place prize. Just draft your team before the NFL playoffs start, and that's it. Drafting players will rack up a bunch of fantasy points and advance deep into the playoffs. That's key to this style of contest. So you're basically trying to predict players that are going to be around for a while and are going to accumulate points. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use the promo code PFF, and you'll get your first deposit up to $100 matched. If you draft your first gauntlet team before the end of Sunday, we already did this. It just passed the deadline.
Sunday did, in fact, just pass.
Yeah, it just passed. But use the promo code PFF. I love this. Playoffs, Underdog Fantasy. Go do it right now. Use the promo code PFF. You can win up to $1 million in total prizes. All right, where do we want to go with the Sunday games? Let's just do the big games. I don't care if they're 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. We'll just do the most important games, and then we'll finish the show by saying Denver won.
Finish the show by all the games that nobody cared about.
So what did people care about? Let's talk about the Chiefs. We just talked about the Bills.
The Chiefs, that's where you want to go.
They went to overtime. It was an overtime game.
It was.
Chiefs-Texans. Chiefs win 30-24 against the preseason Week 4 Texans.
Yeah. Not even. That's the thing. The Vikings and the Colts game was crazy and one of the most absurd games in NFL history and one of the funniest games in NFL history. But this was the weirdest game of the week, where the Kansas City Chiefs, who are arguably the best team in football this season, who had a 14-point, they were favored by 14 going into the game, were taken to overtime, not just by the Houston Texans, who were on their way to the number 1 overall pick by a pretty comfortable margin, but by the Houston Texans shorn of all of their best players. Not whatever passes for Houston's best players this year, but like anybody of consequence was injured in this game. And they still ended up having success. This game makes no sense at all. There is no logical explanation for why or how this happened.
I know we got pushback that we were so negative about Patrick. I'm so negative about Patrick Mahomes, and I vowed to be different. And I tweeted yesterday, like this game against the Texans, even though it's against the Texans, it's actually a good case for Patrick Mahomes, the MVP. Not because he tore it up against the Houston Texans in a bad defense, but because the rest of the Chiefs tried to lose this game. I mean, Mahomes goes 36 for 41. There's a drop in there as well. It's the highest completion percentage in NFL history for anyone over 35 completions in a game. So he's 88% completions. Kept finding, he missed a couple early, and then that was it. Like, he hit his last 20 or whatever it was. Ran for a touchdown as well. Just kept moving the chains. Jerick McKinnon was fantastic as well. But I mean, there were some good players for Kansas City, but 2 lost fumbles in there. McKinnon, one of them, I believe. Pacheco and McKinnon were the 2 lost fumbles. Like, the Chiefs' offense got stopped, once or twice for real, and then they fumbled twice. Yeah, you give credit to the Texans, but it was kind of like we were joking about the pregame analysis. How can the Texans win this game? You get turnovers, red zone. That was how they kept close, right? Turnovers. The Texans just kept converting these key third downs, kept the ball, and just stayed in it somehow.
There were also a couple plays in there where it's like only Mahomes can do that.
Oh, the throwback to Kelsey.
Yeah. There are plays where Mahomes and Josh Allen are very similar in certain ways in that they can make very closely related plays, but Josh Allen does it from a base of just more brute strength than Mahomes does. Like, it always sort of manifests slightly differently. Like, they both have very, very similar touchdowns. Mahomes, where he's rolling right, spins around a defender, and then does that little flick to a guy that's opened up. Allen had the same thing, but instead of like spinning around a guy, he like stiff-armed a linebacker to the turf
right.
before he fired it in there. You know what I mean? It's effectively the same play, but it came about slightly differently. But whereas Josh Allen and Herbert, I think, probably have stronger arms than Mahomes if you said, right, plant your feet, set your feet, and fire the ball through this barn door. Like, you can see these TikTok videos every now and again where there's like X number of planes of glass. It's like, how many planes of glass can you break by throwing something through it, right? Allen would break more panes of glass than anybody else in the league. Herbert will probably be second. But Mahomes seems to be able to generate velocity and distance and accuracy without any platform to do it from in a way that I don't think any other quarterback can do. So that throwback to Kelsey, like Brett Favre, who is a Hall of Fame quarterback with one of the strongest arms in league history, independent of the potentially robbing the poor for money. Brett Favre has a low light reel for his career of all of these plays where he rolls out into the flat and decides to hurl it back across his body and quickly reminds you why you're coached not to do that, because the ball hangs in the air for a while and somebody picks it off that you didn't see coming or that you just gave too much chance to get to the spot. Like, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history with one of the strongest arms in NFL history has a giant highlight reel of plays that shows you the folly of doing that. And yet Mahomes is able to do that with absurd regularity. Like, he gets out into nowhere, and Kelsey is like halfway back across the middle of the field, like, arms in the air waving as if like, hey, I'm open. But like, you don't throw there because you're going to put the ball in the air for a million miles, like for an hour. Somebody's going to walk under it, pick it off, and you're going to look like an idiot. And yet he jumped. Like, with no feet on the ground, he turns and like hurls it back across the field and connects perfectly with him. And you're like, how does he do that? Mahomes is the only quarterback in the league.
And he gets it there just in time.
Every time.
Just in time. He's just like as a runner.
Yeah, he's the only quarterback in the league that can hit that almost every freaking time, and it makes no sense.
His spatial awareness, his vision, Because on that play, when he's scrambling right, everything to the right is taken.
Yeah.
Right? Kelsey's literally the only option there.
Right.
And like the Josh Allen touchdown, as I mentioned with James Cook, was he created an open throw when there wasn't one. Right? We talk about supporting cast and all these things all the time. And yeah, I mean, if a receiver wins his route and he's open, you're supposed to hit him and all that fun stuff. But what Allen and Mahomes and some of these guys are doing are creating plays that aren't there, right? What used to happen is if nobody's open, you get good at the back shoulder game, right? You get good at, okay, nobody's open, but I have an answer for that. We're gonna back shoulder throws, right? Because he's covered technically, but I'm accurate enough and I've got enough rapport with my receivers that we're gonna create this open throw. What Mahomes and Allen and some of these guys are doing, scrambling out and then creating these open throws that shouldn't be there.
And the point with that one is that the Kelsey player is always open because he's nowhere near the play, and
the defense is
right. The defense generally leaves that guy open because you can't throw it to him because the ball's going to be in the air for so long that you're going to pick it off. Like Sidney Rice was open when Brett Favre decided to heave it back across his body in the 2009 NFC Championship game. But the ball was in the air so long that it got picked off, and it was the play that lost the game. Like, you don't make that throw because it's so dangerous. And yet Mahomes makes it all the time and gets it there somehow, despite not being able to plant his feet. And it's just there was that play, and then a couple of plays earlier, there was one where he's like running to the right in his own end zone and just like casually flicks the ball like 55 yards in the air.
That was dropped. Justin Watson.
Yeah, Justin Watson doesn't come up with it. But like, again, that was just madness that he's able to do that.
So, then on top of that, I think the Chiefs' offense always does a good job of scheming up open throws as well. And you have Jerick McKinnon, open in the flats a lot. I mean, they were moving the ball effectively until they fumbled it. Texans hung tough. They played hard. In overtime, the Chiefs got the ball first. They did get it. The Texans get a stop, right? A rare sack of Patrick Mahomes. Blake Cashman played only 4 snaps, one of which was a sack of Mahomes on 3rd and long. Chiefs have to punt it. Texans give it away at that point. After all of that, they give it away. I could see Bills fans at home just like, come on, Texans, don't tease us like that, right? I mean, you're battling for the number 1 seed. You got the same record. You have the tiebreaker. You don't expect the Chiefs to lose to the Texans, but they teased you just a little bit. Buffalo and Cincinnati fans maybe, battling for that number 1 seed. Davis Mills scrambles out, fumbles, Chiefs recover.
Such a bad
They're
fumble.
in field goal range as it is, but then Jerick McKinnon just runs it right in for a game-ending touchdown.
It was such a bad fumble as well. Like, he's escaped the pocket, he's getting a positive play, and then he's just holding the ball like out where it's loose. He's just holding the ball like it's not a problem that somebody's chasing him down and probably aiming for the football. Like, just protect it, for God's sake. It's funny. You're like, how does this game happen? I mean, the Texans chewed up like the entirety of the first quarter score. They score after almost making a mess of it, by the way. Like, who was it? Aikens dropped a touchdown. Okay, it was pass interference as well, so they got away with it. But like, he dropped a touchdown. They ended up scoring. They go up the touchdown, so they're 7-0 up after basically 14 and something minutes. The entire first quarter's gone. But then like Kansas City's good like 3 minutes later, it's 7-7. Like, yeah, see, this is the problem. That the Chiefs' offense, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, they're just going to score, and it's very hard to get over the top of that. But the overtime was the perfect, like it unfolded exactly the way it needed to for Houston to get anything done, and then you just gave the ball away.
Well, yeah, the Texans were playing tough. They did force 3 punts on the first 6 possessions, 3 punts and a one-play fumble as far as drives go. So that's how the Texans are in it. But then again, at some point, it's like, well, the better team's just going to look better. The Chiefs go 13 plays for 97 yards on a touchdown drive before the half. Right? That's, if you're a Texans fan sitting there like, how are we going to pull this off? Everything's going right. Everything's going right. And you give up a 13-play, 97-yard drive. It's just like, well, the Chiefs are just too good here. But you still got to overtime, which was impressive. So playing hard for Lovie Smith, I know that. An outmanned Texans team. They're 1-12-1, but they played really well against the one of the best teams in the NFL. Real quick, is the rest of the Chiefs roster just not comparable to, say, the Bills and the Bengals in the AFC? Is that what's going to come back to bite? And honestly, even if the Chiefs go up against the Dolphins in, say, the first round of the playoffs, is that a dangerous one? I mean, I feel like we're at that level. If they have to play their division rival Chargers or have to play the Dolphins, Chiefs are really good, but it's that offense carrying things, right?
Yeah.
Defense made some stops and all that stuff. I know they won it at the end, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's kind of gone back to being what we expect the Chiefs to be, which is really good on offense. The defense isn't as good. The roster overall isn't the strongest in the NFL, but they have Mahomes and Kelsey, and that makes an awful lot of things not matter.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up. All right, let's go Jacksonville Jaguars, 40. Dallas Cowboys, 34. The Jags win once again. They're now within a game of the Tennessee Titans in the AFC South, and it looks like we are headed toward a potential Week 18 battle. Jaguars and Titans for the AFC South. Could be happening. Cowboys fall to 10-4. Jaguars move to 6-8. Cowboys were up 21-10, 24. They were up 27-10.
They had this game in hand, and then a couple-minute sequence where Trevor Lawrence hits like a giant
Jones.
bomb. Yeah. Zay Jones had, I think, the same number of touchdowns or more touchdowns in this game than he had for the Raiders, something like that. Hits Jones with a bomb. Then they get a sack on Dak Prescott, and then immediately after that, Prescott throws an interception in his own, from his own backed up. Then they get a big run play from Agnew to set up a low red zone, all within like a minute. And all of a sudden, this game is flipped on its head, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming back and making this a big game, and then it continued to break their way.
There's another game where it was like, if you're going to make a comeback like that, don't you think everything should go perfect? Shouldn't everything go well? And it didn't. Like, Lawrence he's making big-time throws, just unbelievable stuff. Again, one of his best throws was a negated, he breaks out of a sack, rolls out, finds somebody in the end zone, and we're seeing the spectacular stuff from Lawrence every single week that we should. And then they have this comeback attempt for the game-tying field goal, and Lawrence fumbles once they get into field goal range. Great scramble, tries to cut back, he fumbles. Like, this is what we're saying about the NFL this weekend. It's not as clear-cut as, here's this great comeback and everything went well for this team. Like, even in comeback attempts like the Jaguars had here, they almost blew it as well. But they still ended up getting to overtime. And then the overtime winner, man, it just dropped by Noah Brown. Yep. Noah Brown had 2 touchdowns earlier in the game, but dropped by Noah Brown pops up into Rayshon Jenkins' hands.
It's ridiculous.
Pick
play.
6. Walk-off pick 6. Cowboys looked stunned.
Yeah, like not the most accurate pass in the world, but hit his receiver in the hands.
Yeah, but it's one you don't even – right. It's not the most accurate pass in the world, but it's one that should have been a first down.
Yeah.
It's one that happens all the time in the NFL. Here's a sliding catch beyond the sticks for a first down. Nobody's going to bat an eye. Like, this wasn't on Dak, that particular one. The other interception was. But.
It's just the stupid variance in NFL from the same throw. This is where grading is important. Like, the ridiculous variance in result from exactly the same pass between very positive EPA play in overtime, driving to try and take a lead. You hit your receiver, not in the hands because he had to adjust, but like what should have been a catch for a positive yardage for driving in overtime to win the game actually ends up being a game-losing pick 6 for the exact same throw. Like, that's ridiculous. There's no other. I can't think of another sport where things are that like wild in terms of results for exactly the same play from like the quarterback throws the ball, and once he's done that, the outcome is so entirely dependent on what the guy on the other end is going to do to it that it can range from really useful positive play to actually you've just lost the game.
There was right. I hear you, man. It is nuts. Lawrence had a great touchdown late too. Micah Parsons right in his face. Walker Little had to come in, play right tackle. That didn't go so hot, particularly on that play. Parsons right in his face. Trevor still gets the touchdown there. The other key play, was it on the game-tying field goal drive? Evan Ingram getting out of bounds. It looked like the Jags were blowing it again, where they were taking these passes in bounds where they weren't able to stop the clock, and Evan Ingram worked so hard to get out of bounds. They reviewed it, said, hey, he did to stop the clock, and that bought some extra time for the Jaguars to get into field goal range to tie it up just to get to overtime.
Yeah, and we also need to talk about the Dallas right tackle solution. So Terrence Steele, obviously down, gone for the year. We were debating in the preview, what do they do at right tackle? Do they go with Josh Ball? Do they put Jason Peters, 20-year veteran at left tackle? Do they then ask him to play right tackle? And Tyron Smith is on his way back, so that adds even more complexity to the whole situation. So what they end up doing is starting Tyron Smith, first game back from a really serious hamstring injury, at right tackle for the first time since 2011, and rotate in Jason Peters at right tackle. So they take two longtime veteran left tackles and effectively rotate them in at right tackle. Neither of them played particularly well, but just the fact that that was A, the solution, and B, that it kind of worked is pretty absurd. Like Tyron Smith coming back, first game back from injury, playing a position he hasn't played for a decade is silly.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's we talked about the difficulty in doing that with veterans. I didn't think of the Tyron Smith solution. He was I
didn't know he was coming back this week.
Yeah, he was the more recent right tackle. And again, right, which was 2011.
Right.
Those are, in what you just said, those are common things, right? Here's this rookie, he plays right tackle for a year, and then he moves to left tackle for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Those types of moves are common, right? Plays left tackle in college. He played both in college, I believe.
He did.
Then he played both in the NFL for the first couple of years, and then you settle in at left tackle.
If this happened a decade ago, it would make a lot of sense.
Yes, but there is not a great history of longtime left tackles moving to right tackle. We'll see how it goes going forward for the Cowboys here, but
Dallas, by the way, in this game also had a really nice play where they just manufactured, sometimes where you catch the defense in something because of their rules. So Dallas was able to get Josh Allen, the pass rusher, covering a tight end one-on-one down the sideline into the end zone on a wheel route. We just dial up a play that catches the defense in something that's just a bad matchup. And immediately, as soon as Dak Prescott sees that, it's automatic, ball in the air, give the guy a chance to make a play. Who was it that caught it? Backup tight end, whose name I can't remember.
Ferguson?
No, let me load Peyton Hendershot.
Oh, Hendershot on the touchdown. Yeah, I didn't know which play
for his touchdown.
Offhand. Yeah, does this take a little luster off the Christmas Eve game, Eagles and Cowboys?
It's not as meaningful, but it's still
it means something for hey, what are these playoff caliber teams?
Yeah, Dallas
look like?
Goes from pushing Philadelphia for the division to, well, that's probably gone now, but you're still a dangerous playoff team that can particularly in the NFC, where the Bucs might still host a playoff game, where Minnesota is going to host a playoff game. In this conference, a team like Dallas, who's going to be the sort of the prime wild card team, Dallas is a threat to any of those teams.
Yeah, because Philly's 13-1 now. They have a 3-game lead over Dallas. They both clinch playoffs.
Philadelphia have only clinched the playoffs. They haven't yet clinched.
So technically, Eagles could lose their last 3. Cowboys could win their last 3 and win the division. But it takes a little bit of the luster off. What do you make of? I mentioned this to you last week. What do you make of the Cowboys struggling with the Texans? Does that mean something going forward? The Texans now back-to-back weeks have taken it to the Cowboys and the Chiefs. Lost both games, but kept it close late and had chances to win.
I didn't think last week meant a whole lot. I don't even know if this week means a whole lot.
Maybe the Texans are just better than we made. Lovie Smith's got him playing hard, man.
Yeah. Jacksonville, I think, is now a pretty decent team. So maybe this week means more than last week, but it's also against a much better side. I think ultimately Dallas is still fine. Their offense did a lot. Micah Parsons was again dominant. I think they did enough that they probably should have won this game, put it out of sight. But a minute-plus sequence in the middle of the game swung it out of their favor and back to Jacksonville.
We mentioned Dak had
Plus, by the way, again, remember, they lost because in overtime a positive play ended up being a pick six because somebody couldn't catch a ball.
Again, you got to. It wasn't a positive play for the Cowboys. It was a positive play for Dak.
Yeah,
as the quarterback.
Right, but all you're
it's a bad play by the Cowboys. It was a drop.
Yes, but it's not like it was a good. It's not like it was. They didn't have it taken away from them by a great defensive play. A guy who had the ball hit him in the hands managed to turn that into a pick six. That's a play. You're looking at this and saying, should Dallas have won this game or not? you just catch a football and you win the game, probably.
Dr. Eric Eager had a tweet last night, rest in peace, about what the AFC playoff quarterbacks could look like. Now, I got to question his order here. He went Mahomes, Allen, Burrow first. And I don't know if this was his way of saying this is in order of who's good or who he thinks is going to get the number 1 seed or anything. Noted Chiefs fan here. But you got Mahomes, Allen, Burrow. Yep. And now in the playoffs, potentially, we also could see Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa. Like the new era of young AFC quarterbacks. That would push, Ryan Tannehill out. That would say Mac Jones and the Patriots don't make it. Zach Wilson and the Jets don't make it. What a group that would be, though. A group of 7. And I just want to say Trevor Lawrence in that group. Games like this where he can just – these are the comebacks I was talking about, right? Like these are the things we expected to see from Trevor Lawrence at some point. He's there, right? He is there. I don't want to announce his arrival every single week, but this is another one where he's able to make these big time plays, big time throws, and just be this Herbert, Mahomes, Allen. Like he's a playmaker, just like all those other guys. It started a little bit slower for Trevor Lawrence.
I mean,
but he's in that boat where he could lead a team to score 40 points, 30-something points. And be in these games and maybe create some havoc in the playoffs if they get in.
He's now played in the NFL for almost 2 years, and he's got maybe 8 or 9 good games. 5 of them have come in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, this is 1996 Jaguars type of stuff, Going to get into the playoffs, upset the Broncos.
We need to get the Lions, otherwise people are going to be mad. Get on with it.
It's 8-11. We're good. Lions 20. Jets 17. The Lions are 7-7. There you go.
They've gone from a 7% chance to make the playoffs to a 21% chance last week. I think now they're above 30. They're still not like the chances are, the odds are still that they will miss the playoffs, but they're moving in the right direction every week.
They are. So the Lions moved to 7-7, just like the Seattle Seahawks. They're both on the outside looking in. As far as the playoff picture goes, the Giants win last night gives them a leg up. Man, this tie is really going to throw everything off, isn't it? That stupid tie. The Commanders have the 7 seed right now at 7-6-1, just above the 7-7 Seahawks and the 7-7 Lions. Mm-hmm. Seahawks have the tiebreaker over America's Lions at the moment. America's Lions. And, of course, the Bucs are in there with the 6-8 division.
Yeah.
Lions have a better record than the Bucs now.
So does most people, yeah. The Bucs, they're bad.
This was a good back-and-forth game. I thought Detroit's offense looked great early. Goff looked good early, but then after that, there was nothing going, really. The Jets' defense played much better. Lions' offense wasn't getting much going until the end. 17-13, the Jets have the lead. Fourth quarter comeback attempt. It's 4th and 1. Jared Goff, they run play action on 4th and 1. You talk about the good plays and the bad plays on 4th and 1. This was a good play. And it was like his third read on the play. They get that little shallow coming backside. Brock Wright catches it, goes 51 yards for the game-winning touchdown. Jets still had, obviously, some opportunities after that, but Lions defense held on.
Yeah, I mean, how good is Ben Johnson as an offensive coordinator? I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how he was just one step ahead of Ed Donatel for the entire game. Like, every single time, it was like he showed him one thing and then slapped him in the face with something else. Again, when you need a play, they dial up, the tight end running across the field against the grain, completely uncovered effectively. Like the Jets defense that's been doing a really good job, even without Quinnen Williams, was causing a lot of problems, was getting there with the pass rush, was making a mess of that Detroit offensive line. When they needed a play, he dialed up a perfect play call to get a guy wide the hell open in open space and runs through the Jets defense for a big gain. Like, Ben Johnson is just absolutely crushing it this season in terms of play calling. Like, he might be the best play caller in the NFL from what I've been seeing. The stuff that he's able to dial up at crucial times in high leverage situations. So generally, this Detroit offense has been really cooking this season, but they've had a couple of games here or there against really good defenses where it hasn't worked. And even in those games, their play caller is able to dial up stuff right at the key time. So when you got to have it, they have it.
You got to be a little bit more definitive in your takes here. If you want to be on ESPN, you have to say Ben Johnson is the best offensive play caller in the NFL.
Of all time.
This, hands down. No, yeah, not just this year.
Greatest I've ever seen.
Of all time.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson.
Greatest play caller I've ever seen.
Thank you. Till next week.
Yeah.
No, yes. Man, just credit the Lions. They're playing tough, and their defense has been so much better too, right? I mean, that's, again, every single week it's as bad as they were in the first half of the year. They're that much better right now. They weren't making stops against anybody early in the year. Whatever switch flipped when they played the Packers offense a few weeks back, intercepted Aaron Rodgers 3 times, and look, they're not the 85 Bears, but they've been 1,000 times better since that point, just creating more tight window throws, making life a little bit more difficult.
Yep, James Houston with another sack. That guy just keeps racking them up since being brought into the lineup. They've got a few players in that defense that are really playing well. Malcolm Rodriguez, a linebacker. James Houston. Aiden Hutchinson has stepped up his game in recent weeks. The defense is definitely moving in the right direction at a pretty impressive rate of knots.
Impressive rate of knots.
Yeah. And then the other thing is we're getting Jameson Williams into the fold on offense. Now, given what we've seen from him in really limited snaps, the guy still only played 12 snaps this week. I get it. He's coming off a major injury. You're slowly easing him into it. But can we increase the speed a little bit? We've gone from 6 to 8 to 12 snaps. How about next week 20? Let's jump. Let's go from 12 to 20. I don't need, 50, but maybe not 14 next. Come on, let's do this quicker. The guy looks amazing. Get him out there.
What's the opposite of impressive rate of knots?
Slow.
Jameson Williams' development here.
Yeah.
His snap count.
I understand caution. And it makes a ton of sense, and maybe the medical people are dictating this or whatever it is, but I'm just so excited by what Jameson Williams can be in this offense because he looks electric anytime he's out there. And it just it adds something to this offense that as much as you're look, it's really doing well, it's cooking, it always sort of feels like it's a little bit smoke and mirrors. And part of that is Ben Johnson, the play caller, but it always feels a little bit unsustainable because ultimately Amon-Ra St. Brown, as good as he is not, Stephon Diggs. He's not necessarily a guy that can carry the offense by himself. And DJ Chark, he can do some things deep down the field, but he's not that electric, dynamic, incredible playmaker. They're just missing a guy like Jameson Williams, which is why they went and got him in the draft. And now that you're seeing these tantalizing glimpses of it, you're come on, use it more.
Yeah, as great as Ben Johnson's been as the best offensive coordinator of all time, you give him this added weapon of Jameson Williams to go with DJ Chark and
now you're in the Hall of Fame.
Khalif Raymond and all these guys. Yes, now you can walk right into the Hall of Fame. Got to give a shout out to, we mentioned the Lions defense. The Jets did not have a running back carry of more than 6 yards. Alim McNeil, defensive tackle, second-year player, not third-year. Second-year player, another really good game against the run, playing stout up front. Not saying he's DJ Reader or anything yet, but we've seen the impact that one effective nose tackle has had for, say, the Bengals and their run defense. Alim McNeil has shown enough flashes, he's kind of getting there as a playmaker. He was right in the middle of a whole bunch of defensive stops for that run defense. And the Jets offense was very boom or bust in this game. Zach Wilson got the start. We didn't know this, I don't think, at the time when we were making picks on this game.
No, Mike White was trying to get himself cleared, and 10 doctors told him to forget about it because he got broken ribs.
Yeah. So you got to sit out with the broken ribs here, Mike. Zach Wilson gets the start, and there's just no pattern to Zach Wilson games. Average depth of target was 14.
Yeah, 15 if you eliminate no plays.
So it was literally 3 times deeper than Jared Goff.
Yes.
On a per-throw basis. And we saw some special from Zach Wilson. We saw some nice throws.
Yeah.
We saw some bad ones. So they've got the comeback attempt.
This was the game.
He led a go-ahead drive in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. This was the game that you actually thought Zach Wilson would look like, when he was drafted. It's okay, Zach Wilson brings some special to the table. It comes from this BYU offense. Never been pressured in his life. It's going to be a little weird. You're going to see some high variance. And it wasn't. Up until now, it's never really been high variance. It's just been bad. But this was the high variance. We saw some big-time throws from Zach Wilson and some legit play. We also saw some terrible play that we've become accustomed to. At one point, he missed Denzel Mims on a slant that was so far behind Denzel Mims that it was actually behind Jeffrey Okudah, who was trailing Denzel Mims so far that he couldn't intercept it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Which means it's like 2 yards off where it's supposed to be on, a 5-yard slant, whatever that works out to being as an actual distance trigonometrically, math-wise, geometrically. But that was terrible. That's one of the worst worst routine throws you're ever going to see a quarterback make. And then he comes back and actually layers some really nice big plays in there as well.
Yeah, so the Jets had 2 fourth-quarter comeback drives, right? The one that was successful and got them to take the lead, Wilson hits this beautiful 3rd and 19, deep crosser, right in stride. If there's one thing I'll say about Wilson, they still had some of the weird stuff where he drops back, it's a clean pocket, and then he sprints right. It was like a Madden player, right? It feels like when we compliment Mahomes and Allen for doing this, it feels like they're doing it with a purpose, right? They're sprinting right, and Peyton, I always mention Peyton. He used to always do this. If the defensive end stunted, he would use that to create room. He would say, "Oh, you're stunted. I'm going to beat the defensive tackle to the spot and make," but it's still a pocket throw for Peyton, right? He was reading the defensive line's movement. Wilson would take this normal 4-man rush and just sprint right, like a Madden player, and just leave the pocket too much. It happens sometimes. What I'm saying is it did feel like he was in rhythm a little bit more. Now, his in-rhythm throws may have been all over the place, right? There were some bad misses. There were some good ones. But for whatever it was worth, he was throwing on time and in rhythm. I'll call that a win for the Jets and Zach Wilson's development. There was a lot of plays where he hits the top of his drop, got rid of it. There was enough plays in there where I was like, they're trying. They're trying to make improvements here. Wilson's working hard to make improvements here. I saw some of that. You saw some of the special downfield throws, and they were very aggressive with Wilson throwing the ball down the field. The complete opposite of what they did in that Bills game plan where it was all take the ball out of Wilson's hands. They put it into his hands. There was some good. There was some bad. Overall, I think it's still a step forward in his development.
Yeah, I mean, given what we last saw from Wilson, I think this was a giant step in the right direction, even if his grade, because it was so high variance and there was a lot of bad in there, won't necessarily be any better. This was reason. I think for the Jets overall, this was as encouraging as a playoff back-breaking defeat can be. They're now bottom of that division, but they showed that their defense is legit without their best player, arguably, in Quinnen Williams. Their now backup quarterback actually showed some signs of life, and they could have beaten the Lions. They didn't, but this was a game that showed the Jets are still they're still a very good football team. It just wasn't enough. And then for Detroit, keeps them alive in the playoffs and showed that they're legit for a run.
Yeah, that's it is a disappointment for the Jets. As great as they started this season, they're now 7-7, tied with the Patriots. The Patriots have the tiebreaker because of the head-to-head, of course. But you're on the outside looking in. Officially a game back from 2 different wildcard teams, the Chargers and the Dolphins. And 1 game back of both of them at 8-6, and 2 games behind the Ravens, who are 9-5. Mm-hmm. So the playoffs are looking a little bit more bleak here for the Jets. Jaguars and Jets this week, Thursday night. Get Zach Wilson back, probably. Do you just roll with Zach Wilson, or is Mike White when
I think Mike White gets the job back as soon as the doctors tell him he can play.
When the ribs healed?
Yeah. But that's not that doesn't feel like a week, that the kind of thing that's going to heal in a week. I mean, if your ribs are broken, which apparently was the report, to the point where 10 doctors are saying, forget about it, I don't know that that's next week, you're fine. That feels like you're out for a while, no?
Yeah, could be. I really want to see the number 1 versus number 2 pick, though. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson.
By the way, Denzel Mims just can't catch a break. The dude ends up actually being a big part of this game and then out with a concussion immediately.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm just bummed for Denzel Mims.
For your guy. So, Jets-Jaguars this Thursday with playoff implications. How about that? Also saw somebody highlight Jaguars and Lions, first 2 picks in the draft last year, right here, right on the cusp, playing for a playoff spot. Love the NFL. I mean, that's this season, right, in a nutshell. Congrats, Lions fans. Good job. Go Lions. You guys are doing great. How's that? Was that good?
Good work.
Good rah-rah? Enough? Yeah. What else happened yesterday?
We got New England, Las Vegas, just for that ending.
Okay, yeah. I got to get out of the 1 o'clock games. Let's go to that. We'll talk Bucs Bengals. We'll talk Chargers, Titans. We'll talk all of those first.
So many games left.
Yes. Las Vegas Raiders 30, Patriots 24. What do you think of this game?
This might be the most ridiculous ending of a game in NFL history. So
on a weekend where the biggest comeback occurred.
The largest comeback in NFL history occurred. The hapless, disastrous Houston Texans took the Chiefs to overtime before they lost it. Like, okay, so Mac Jones must want to murder everybody in that building at this point, because I think it's becoming more and more clear as the season wears on that Mac Jones is not the problem in New England. It's everything else. And actually, not even everything else. More specifically, the coaching. The Patriots, from all outward evidence, actually display the signs right now of being a badly coached football team. And Bill Belichick is still the head coach. I think it's probably fair to assume that it's not Belichick causing the problems, which puts the focus on a couple of human beings, and everybody knows who they are. So the Patriots kept making an absolute balls of scoring. They get, like, okay, they what is it, pass interference sets them up right in the shadow of the Vegas goal line. They then score a touchdown, but it's taken off the board because somebody on the sideline called a timeout. Mac Jones is now about to murder somebody immediately because he's, scored a touchdown. They just got it taken off. They then score again on a quarterback sneak. Mac Jones does the old jump over the pile thing, extend the ball over the goal line. Touchdown. Nope. Negated by a false start.
That was incredible, those touchdowns, that they were unable to score a touchdown.
This is all in the same drive.
Yeah.
So, and then they have to settle for a field goal. Like, at this point, Jones is pissed. Having, a couple of weeks ago, he's screaming at somebody on the sideline, the quick game sucks. Like, just pass the ball. Like, it's actually, they're kind of doing what he wants, only they keep making a mess of it. And so, somehow, the Patriots then get a lead. They're doing a reasonable job. And the Raiders score the tying touchdown. Only pretty much all visual evidence seems to suggest that the second foot landed out of bounds. They review it. The officials are like, not conclusive.
I'm going to tweet this out. I think we need to maybe try to put it up on the screen.
It's not conclusive, so the call stands. Now, after the game, the officials in the pool report essentially said it was not clear enough on replay to overturn it. They also said that had it been called an incompletion on the field, it wasn't clear enough to overturn it the other way either. This is the only problem with the idea of default to calling it a touchdown because it'll get looked at on replay. Sometimes you're like, just let it go because then it'll get checked, Problem is when it's checked and it's close enough that you just don't want to mess with the call. So they end up calling a touchdown what I'm pretty sure everybody really knows wasn't. Now, it was very close, but it wasn't. So now New England are tied in a game where they should be winning. And time is expiring. They don't really have enough time to get it done. So they just run a draw. They just run a draw up the middle, chew up some time, eat up the clock, we'll go to overtime. The giant hole up the middle, because the Raiders aren't defending a draw, because all you're caring about is stopping them getting to the sideline or having a giant play. So they're essentially running prevent defense. Ramondre Stevenson has a giant hole at the middle, then starts moving to the right and decides to lateral the ball to Jacoby Myers for no reason under God's green earth. Myers, seemingly inspired by the idea of lateraling the ball, decides, I guess this is the situation we're in now. It's crazy, crazy woo-woo time. Just turns around and heaves it back into the middle of the field in the direction of Mac Jones, who's 20 yards behind the play just watching this unfold. Doesn't get it there. Chandler Jones, the defensive end from the opposition, picks it up, and the only thing standing between him and a walk-off touchdown is Mac Jones. So what does he do? He just stiff arms him to the turf, runs over him, and scores. The Raiders walk off in victory. And the Patriots are like, what the hell just happened?
Mac Jones catching all sorts of strays, figuratively and literally, catching a stiff arm.
Right.
I mean, Mac Jones, people are like, I got to find the Mac Jones quote where he took full responsibility for not tackling Chandler Jones. For not tackling Chandler Jones.
Stop it.
Mac Jones, poor Mac Jones, just hands the ball off. It's a draw play. Mac Jones is thinking about what plays are we going to run in overtime. We're just running a draw. We're going to run it out. Nobody's going to score here. We're going to go to overtime. Hope we win the coin toss. What are we going to run? Hope we win in overtime. Before you know it, there's a ball coming at him from Jacoby Myers, and it's intercepted by Chandler Jones, who stiff arms him to hell.
Yes. And look, Chandler Jones is 6'5" and 260 pounds and decided he was going to run right over him. Like, okay, should Mac Jones have been able to execute that tackle as a large enough human being in his own right? Probably. But of the things to focus on that play, that is way down the list. Like, yeah, okay, how hard is it to tackle a guy? On the other hand, no. Why? Let's not focus on that. Let's focus on everything else that was absurd in this play. And look, Jacoby Myers, to his eternal credit, came out and 100% owned this in all of his media appearances after the game, answered every question, did it with like tears in his eyes. Like, the poor guy made one of the worst mistakes an NFL player has ever made on a football field, and came out and 100% addressed it and said, look, I just tried to do too much. I screwed it up. I made a huge mistake. I cost us the game. Huge credit to Myers for that. But he's right. Like, he did. He did something completely inexplicable and insane, and they lost the game because of it.
All right, there's a lot of insane things that happen on that play. First off, the dots, the NGS dots, I usually don't.
Yeah.
I feel like those are overrated. Like, here are the dots from the play. It's like I just watched the humans make the play. I don't care about the dots. The dots for this play are hilarious, though.
Particularly the one where Mac Jones's dot just dies. He just doesn't move again.
I think the Jacoby Myers part, though, because Stevenson laterals it to him, and then Myers retreats like 10 yards just to create some space to lateral it to his immobile quarterback.
Yes.
Sorry, he's not immobile. He runs like a 4.7. To his quarterback.
Yeah.
Where it gets intercepted by Chandler Jones. All right. So let's just back up really quick here. It is a tie game.
Right. Why did it happen?
Why, in a tie game, they asked Bill Belichick, why didn't you throw it? We can't throw the ball that far. Might be fair, right?
Okay.
I can understand the reasoning that we're not going to risk throwing a Hail Mary, because strip sacks can happen, right? And if you throw it short, it's useless, right? You can't throw a Hail Mary short. It's useless. You might as well just go to overtime. So your two options at the end of the game, in a tie game, should only be you're going to throw a Hail Mary or you're going to take a knee, right? There's nothing in between.
Yes.
And teams do this all the time. They get away with it 99 out of 100 times, right? They could have taken a knee to end the game, and they just run a play. Or they just, end of the half, they just run a draw instead of just taking a knee and going to the locker room. Because bad stuff doesn't happen like this all the time. Why even run a draw? Why even run the ball? You're going to pick up 40 yards and just get tackled, and you're going to overtime anyway. Why risk injury? Why risk your running back's going to lateral it to your wide receiver, who's going to retreat 10 yards and throw it and lateral it to your quarterback, and it's going to get picked off for a touchdown? That's why you don't do it. But they should have just taken a knee, first off. So that's a coaching decision to run the ball rather than take the knee. And then I don't know how much you want to blame the coaches for not alerting the players, like, hey, this isn't a desperation lateral situation.
How is that something you even need to alert them to?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you wouldn't. All of the situational football that you practice, you probably don't need to cover in a tie game.
Right.
Don't play the desperation lateral game, because in those situations we see defensive touchdowns all the time when you're losing.
The one thing I don't think you can blame the coaches for is not explicitly telling the people as they go out on the field with 3 seconds left, hey, don't, go crazy with laterals and throw the ball to the defense here. Like, it's a tie game. Anything other than that, we go to overtime.
Tyler, can you check my Twitter? I just retweeted something that it's the Keelan Cole catch. And if we can get that up on the screen at some point, that'd be awesome. It looks out of bounds, and there's people using this picture where like, oh, it's clearly in bounds. I'm like, I'm looking at the picture right now. It looks like he's out of bounds. He's got a two-tone shoe.
So that picture is actually the best evidence of it, which they didn't have when they were reviewing it, by the way.
Yeah, this is at Left Eye Images.
Yes.
And who has 310 followers.
310 followers.
And he's got the best shot of this I've ever seen. Look at that. So, like, if you just think his cleat's white.
Yeah, which it isn't.
Then it looks like he's in bounds. But there's a black part of the shoe.
Correct.
Which appears to be on the white, right? Or there's white kicking up. Or is that in? I don't know. It's really close. That's out, right?
I mean, yes. I think the black part of his shoe is on top of the white line, which makes it out. Like, this is how close it is, right? But it's like we're talking about a centimeter out of bounds.
Oh, I know. So every angle looked like it's probably out of bounds, but I can't clearly see
So the
it.
problem is the best angle they had was from high in the end zone, from somewhere in the middle of the end zone, kind of looking back across him. And from that angle, it looks a lot worse than this because of perspective, right? It's like that in the World Cup. You'll know this as a big soccer fan. Where there was a play in the World Cup where the rule is the whole of the ball needs to be over the whole of the line, right? So there is a world where the ball can be sitting on turf that is over the line. There's like clear daylight between the ball and the white line. But if you look from directly overhead, like the ball overhangs over the line, right? So
because it's an oblong shape.
Right. So this is, from that perspective, it looks like his cleat is way over the line, but it's not. It's because you're looking like from the angle that looks like it's a giant overhang. But from this angle, you see that it's still probably touching the line by like a centimeter. So it shouldn't have stood, and that was the play that tied it up.
So that happened. I mean, let's just back up again, go backwards through games, right? Is that how you do it? The Raiders were up 17-3 again. The most dangerous lead in sports. The Raiders are up 13. Then they kicked an extra point to make it 14. To get back into it, Derek Carr throws a pick six. Kyle Duggar, incredible read. Pick six to make it 17-10. And it looked like same old Raiders. Patriots could not capitalize. They would settle for field goals. Patriots finally take the lead because of Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson has been just incredible this season. They showed a stat, too. He's got only him and Christian McCaffrey have more than 50 catches and over 800 rushing yards, whatever that is. I mean, Stevenson has been really good for this Patriots offense this year. Jacoby Myers had a big seam route. You know, he had like half the Patriots receiving yards on just that one catch at one point that led to that touchdown drive. So Stevenson and Myers were a big part of the Patriots comeback attempt here. They're taking the lead, and then, you know, Raiders come back. They tie it up with 37 seconds left. Yeah, somehow the Patriots managed to give up 14 points in the last 37 seconds of the
game. Can you explain to me how the Raiders institutionally always have the most penalties in the NFL?
No, I have zero explanation for that.
Because they had 13 in this game, which I think tied or was the most in an NFL game. They had that with like 6 minutes left in the game, and then somehow didn't have a penalty down the rest of the way. The Raiders are always the most penalized team in the NFL, regardless of who the head coach is. Why? Stop doing that.
I also can't I don't think the narrative about penalties the way they are in the NFL is true, where it's like, this is an undisciplined team. Because like every penalty is different. I mean, if all of your penalties are a whole bunch of false starts and pre-snap procedural penalties, I do think there's something to that. Jumping off sides, false starts. But like if you're a team that has like a million pass interferences, it's as much probably on your DB coach as it is the head coach. It's not discipline, it's technique, it's getting beat, right? So not all penalties are the same. And because I think that's true, it makes zero sense to me that the Raiders, no matter who the coach is are always leading the league in penalties. Makes no sense.
I don't understand it at all.
So, but anyway, the Raiders won.
They did.
6-8. They're now 6-8. Patriots are 7-7. I mentioned they're tied with the Jets, just outside the playoff picture. The tough one for the Patriots to make the playoffs. They now have the Bengals, Dolphins, and Bills.
Yeah.
In some order. But those are their three remaining games. All teams that are slated to play in the playoffs, two of which may be the two best teams in the AFC, the Bengals and the Bills, right? So New England needed this game just to stay alive, unless they're going to do something special against playoff caliber teams here. The Raiders, still technically alive at 6-8, but they need a whole lot of stuff to happen. But what a ridiculous finish.
Just stupid.
I can't believe that happened.
I genuinely don't understand. So I can kind of get one guy like losing track of the situation or misunderstanding or thinking, crap, we need to score in this play and doing something crazy. Like the Myers thing on its own makes a little bit of sense to me. Not a lot, but I get it.
Because Stevenson started it.
Yes.
Right?
But Stevenson throwing that lateral in the first place, which, by the way, wasn't even – sometimes you see NFL players toss a lateral where it's kind of so obvious that they just default to, well, I'm about to get tackled, but this guy's in space. Let's quickly shovel it to my right, and he's open. Like this one, he had to get it over and around a guy to get it to Myers in the first place. Like the first lateral by Stevenson was nuts. Then Myers takes on that and goes, "Oh, hold my beer." Like launches it back across the middle of the field to a defensive end. Like the whole play was ridiculous.
It would have looked weird if Stevenson basically he laterals it, but Myers knows better, catches it and just takes a knee.
Right, but that would have made sense.
You would just been like, "Nope, sorry, you screwed up. It's a tie game. We're not doing this. We're not playing this game."
And then,
but you're right. Like human nature is like, "Oh, I got lateraled the ball. Like let's play ball now."
And then he would have chewed out Stevenson for attempting such a ridiculous thing in the first place.
And then poor Max just sitting there like, I handed the ball off. The play's over.
The guy that's already got screwed out of like multiple touchdowns earlier in the game by his own coaching staff and by his own offensive lineman false starting is watching this unfold. And then the final indignity of it all, he has to get trampled to death by Chandler Jones running over him like he was like an elephant, just stomping right over the top of him. Like, I honestly, Mac Jones must just have been, I don't even know how you react to that other than sheer disbelief and outrage that it happened.
Credit to Chandler Jones. He's a defensive end. He caught the ball, stiff-armed the quarterback, and took it to the house. Pretty good. It's a good play. Chandler Jones.
Former Patriot.
Revenge game. All right, let's go to the Bengals 34, Bucs 23. Another crazy game. Not as crazy as Minnesota and Indianapolis, but completely one-sided early on and then just flipped in the second half. Bucs were up 17-0. Tony Romo could not stop raving about the Bucs executing an offense. They discovered play action, Sam.
And motion.
They discovered that despite a lack of success on the ground, you can fake handoffs, move defenders, and create open throws. That's how the Bucs were running their offense in the first half. Very effectively. Dominant first half. And they get up 17-0. Bengals tacked on a field goal just before the half. I want to say, I do feel like that was a bit of a turning point.
Momentum shifter.
Here's what Zach Taylor did. The Bucs were driving down to go up 17-0, and Zach Taylor kept calling timeouts, knowing the Bucs might score, but he wanted that one last possession before the half. Now it wasn't like the deciding 3 points in the game or anything, but the Bengals had done nothing on offense. They were throwing interceptions. They had done nothing, and they received the ball. Right? They got the ball. Right? A lot of times when you're one-sided in the first half, it's the team who got the ball first, and then it kind of flips in the second half. The Bengals got the ball and ran like 10 plays, and then they run a quick 2-minute drive just to get in field goal range, kick a field goal, and I felt like that helped a little bit with the Bengals. I thought that was just smart to kind of like steal 3 points by Zach Taylor and the Bengals. Then the second half, Tom Brady just turns the ball over 4 times.
Yeah.
Completely normal. This is the first time a Tom Brady team has ever blown a 17-point lead.
Yes.
It was mostly his fault.
Brady's setting an awful lot of records at the end of his career in a bad way.
Yes.
It's also the second time in his 23-year career that he's been 2 games under 500. The first time being a few weeks ago. That was from Adam Harstad on Twitter. So they 17-0 up and then end up being 34-17 down. The Bengals scored 34 unanswered points after that.
And the last touchdown drive was just garbage time anyway.
Tampa Bay
34 in a row, yeah.
Yeah. They're up 17-3 at the half. They get the ball at the start of the third quarter, as you said, and then they botch a punt.
That was the turning point.
This team cannot get out of its own way. Things are going okay. You finally discovered the secret to functional offense in the first half of Week 15 of the NFL season with Tom Brady as your quarterback, right? Somehow you've discovered the alchemy of turning crap into success. And then you just botch a punt, give the Bengals the ball, and undo everything you just did in the first half. Like, in a weird way, this game is kind of encouraging to me because at least you discovered, or at least you demonstrated that you had found it. Like, if they had just done what they'd done the rest of the season, no play action, no motion, the same crappy offense that we've seen for the entire year, and lost, then you're like, this is just never going to happen. But at least for one half, you demonstrated that there are people within the building that have identified certain areas that everybody else has seen for years and have figured out that they might help. That is reasonably encouraging. The other thing that's encouraging is that despite this, they're still in first place in the division because everybody else in the division sucks. So this team should still host a playoff game, and there are still elements there that if you actually pull them all together can result in functional offense and functional play. Their defense did a really good job in the first half of...
Even in the second half, though, like the Bengals had one touchdown drive that started in their own territory.
Yeah.
Their scoring drives were 13 yards and 31 yards and 13 yards. I mean, it was ridiculous.
So what we said, like in our preview, it was like if Tampa Bay's defense shows up, this could be a close game. If it doesn't, they're going to get blown out. The defense kind of showed up, and they still almost got blown out despite being 17-0 up in the first place.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the Bucs perspective first and then the Bengals perspective because, I mean, it is the complete opposite, right? Championship level football and comebacks. There was a point in that first half where it's like, okay, maybe if the Bucs have figured it out and they can pull the upset against the Bengals, their last 3 games, you get Cardinals, Panthers, and Falcons. Mm-hmm. You win the division, maybe they're 9-8, 10-7, 9-8, whatever it might be. And it's like, all right, do the Cowboys really want to play the Bucs if they've, learned how to fake a handoff to the running back? I mean, that might change everything.
They've learned how to offense.
But that's not the case. It became the same old Bucs where they couldn't get out of their own way, right? So fake punt, Giovanni Bernard wasn't ready for it. They just turned it over right there. They were still in it, though. It was 17-6 after giving up a field goal. Then Brady hits Russell Gage, dropped. Next play, Brady fumbles, right? Like Brady's fumbling a handoff to Leonard Fournette. It just slipped out of Brady's hand.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. The way that the Bucs found a way to
There's so many plays every single game where the Bucs just shoot themselves in the foot over and over and over again. The two that stood out to me, and you've mentioned other ones, but that botch punt, and then they sack Joe Burrow for a 23-yard loss. Burrow tries to escape, then tries to escape again, just keeps running backwards, ends up with nowhere to go. A 23-yard loss on the sack, wiped out because of a defensive holding penalty. And a defensive holding penalty that didn't even need to happen, wasn't necessarily at the point of the play. Like, every time, somebody on the Bucs finds a way of screwing up any positive play they ever have. It's unbelievable how often that happens.
Oh, yeah. Over the last 2 weeks, if you're a Bucs fan watching this, you were celebrating a Mike Evans 65-yard touchdown negated by a holding.
Yep.
Brock Purdy interception at the end of the half that was like, okay, they're going to come back against the Niners. Nope, negated. Mm-hmm. And then this play, Burrow's fantastic, by the way. But this was a terrible play.
Sure.
This was a horrendous play. It was 4th down. He's trying to make something happen. We always talk about Mahomes and Allen and all these guys who create. This was, and Burrow creates as a scrambler a lot. This was one of those, I'm actually surprised I don't see this more often. Quarterback tries to do way too much, loses about 26 yards, flag, negated. And you're right, those are absolute turning points.
There was a one point in the game, which I think this should be like stamped on the tombstone of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2022, but they made another just grind of a disaster play on offense. And Jim Nantz comments, that was a lot of work for an incompletion. Yeah, that's Tampa Bay's offense in a nutshell right there. Like, a lot of work for an incompletion.
That was the Gage play.
Yeah.
Brady was like, thought he might get sacked. He breaks out of it, throws it up. Gage dropped it.
Right.
From a Bengals perspective, the other thing too, like the fine line between these games, the Bengals had a few key third down conversions where Burrow's outside the numbers accuracy or his connections with Jamar Chase, just unbelievable. Like there are some pinpoint passes that just barely get in there to move the chains, and that was like the championship level football that the Bengals started playing, right? So as a championship caliber team, it's not about did you fall behind 17-0, because they did, and they were bad early on. Cincinnati, they couldn't sustain offense. They had a bad, unlucky interception, and they couldn't stop the Bucs. But when you're down and you're able to come back and then make those plays, those precision third down conversions, and then the Bucs made the decision once again, like they did a couple weeks ago. You're down 2 scores, about under 8 minutes left, and they punted it, and it worked for the Bucs 2 weeks ago against the Saints. But in this one, the Bengals put together about a 5-minute drive to essentially seal the deal, right? You keep the chains moving, keep converting first downs, and doing just enough to run the clock out. It was your 4-minute offense took 7 minutes, right? That was incredible too. So I thought the Bengals did a great job there. Burrow's stat line won't be spectacular because they didn't have a full field to work with most of the time. 5.1 yards per attempt, but 4 touchdowns. His Tyler Boyd touchdown. Again, a lot of the passes that Burrow threw, just really accurate where they needed to be. So I thought the Bengals did a great job. Lou Anarumo too, man, so good in the second half. Those second half adjustments that the Bengals defense tends to make, just got to give them credit there.
A really good game by Carlton Davis as well, going one-on-one with Jamar Chase for most of the game. Held up very well. Made 3 forced incompletions, something like that. He had a really good game.
He was engulfing Chase a lot of the time. I think he got beat once late. Was that him? He kind of ripped Chase's face mask and got away with it on one. But
he's one of those guys
there was some key pass breakups in there.
Like we talked about, number 1 corners in the NFL. They're like the best corners in the league in the daily a few days ago. Davis is one of those guys where his high-end play is in that stratosphere. When he puts it all together for a game, he can have that kind of performance. It just doesn't happen as often.
Yeah, I mean that's all you can ask for at corner, right? So, so the Bucs fall to 6-8, still very much in charge of the division because the Panthers lost. So the Bucs control their own destiny and still their most likely team to host a playoff game for the NFC South. Bengals moved to 10-4. They're a game back of the Bills and the Chiefs for that number 1 seed. But here's the deal: if the Bengals win out, the Chiefs just have to lose. The Chiefs would have to lose 1 game, and the Bengals could be the number 1 seed, get the bye in the AFC. Because the Bengals have the tiebreaker over the Chiefs, but the Chiefs do have a better record at the moment at 11-3. But if the Bengals win out, they would have a win over the Bills, have that tiebreaker. So there's still a chance that Cincinnati could get the number 1 seed. They just need Kansas City to lose at one point. So they're probably upset that the Texans teased them yesterday as well. But I was impressed by the Bengals' ability to bounce back there, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, a 17-0 hole and you end up with a pretty comfortable win is impressive.
All right, we'll talk about some other football games here. Los Angeles Chargers 17, Tennessee Titans 14. This game had some scoring early on, hit a little bit of a lull, and then exciting again at the end. Ryan Tannehill injured early, came back from his ankle injury. Justin Herbert with an incredible Herbert-like throw.
You had a couple of them in this game.
Yeah. But the one in particular that gets the Chargers into field goal range for the game winner, 17-14. Huge win for the Chargers, who moved to 8-6, and the Titans might see that NFC South just slowly slipping away right now.
Yeah, Herbert had a couple of throws in this game where, and he does this every game. Like there's a couple of plays in there where like the trajectory and velocity and the arc of his throw is just different to pretty much any other quarterback in the league. Maybe Josh Allen is the only other guy that threads them in with quite this combination of just absurd physics. His problem is he just doesn't do it as often as everybody else or as the other guys. But he's capable of absurd things, and a couple of them were big plays in this game. The most amazing play, though, in this game was Roger McCreary's toss-back interception. So this first game in a long time where Herbert has thrown multiple interceptions, usually the most careful quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, that play was sick.
Puts one into the end zone, like right in the corner. McCreary goes to catch it. It was like a rugby play. To keep it in bounds. He's going out of bounds. He knows there's no chance he's going to get his feet down. Goes into the air, catches it, and then in midair just tosses it gently back into the end zone where the safety is coming over and is able to catch it, get 2 feet in bounds, dot him down before he runs out of bounds himself. Like, just an incredible heads-up play by a rookie. Roger McCreary was a rookie corner and had the heads-up sense to make that kind of play. Like, you see that a lot in rugby where these guys have to try and keep the ball from going out of bounds. So they leap over the line,
rugby tinker,
toss it back. But that's like, it's standard, relatively standard in rugby. Like, it's part of the game that happens all the time.
I know.
This, like, it's been years since somebody's tried one of these.
I'm a rugby expert. I'll know. I'll know soon. Is that one of the things I'm going to practice?
Maybe. We'll see.
McCreary, you mentioned Carlton Davis's high end. McCreary's not the same guy because he's not as big or, both at Auburn. But, no, I'm sorry. Forget it. I'm thinking of, Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
different type of player. But remember, McCreary would have those games where he'd go head-to-head with Traylon Burks and do all these. Like, he was feisty yesterday. This was best game of McCreary's career yesterday. Played tough. He was close on a bunch of stuff. So, yeah, it was a good little back-and-forth game. I thought Nasir Adderley had a nice interception. Remember when he came out, he had like 2 or 3 incredible plays as a free safety. Haven't always seen that for the Chargers. He showed off those skills on a Tannehill interception. But game's going back and forth here. And Herbert rolls out, hits the big pass up the sideline. And that was another one where there's nothing there, right? Like that's kind of the theme here. When you talk about the term system quarterback is overused and overrated, right? And then the people who push back on it push back the wrong way. They're like, what do you mean system? Every quarterback runs a system. But it's like, all right, let's get to the meaning of what people are saying. There are some quarterbacks who can only succeed when you scheme it up for them, right? For the most part, right? Hit the open throws. And when things aren't there, they're going to struggle. You like to call them paint by numbers quarterbacks, Sam. Mm-hmm. Paint by numbers. Here's a 7, color it this color. Herbert on this play, there was nothing there. And he created something that wasn't there. He was a creator. That was the thing that we're talking about that Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Herbert and Lamar and so many of these quarterbacks have right now in today's NFL. That it's not just the scheme. And then when you do pair them with a great scheme, then you see just ridiculousness, right? And Herbert hasn't been paired with a great scheme just yet, I don't think. So that's why a lot of people are talking about, like, there's so much hyperbole in Justin Herbert evaluations. Best young quarterback we've ever seen, or he's overrated, he's underrated, he's all these different things. But this play, on the run, laser beam to get them into field goal range was the difference in the game. And you can't always do that with the quote-unquote system quarterback. And I thought that was huge.
Yep.
Do you have anything else?
No, we really don't have time to have anything else for this game.
We're not talking about the other games that much.
We're not talking about any of the other games, and we've got a lot of them to get through.
All right, what else do you want to talk
about?
Give me a game.
Philadelphia, Chicago.
25-20. Eagles win. Move to 13-1. One step closer to that number 1 seed.
Yep. Eagles, I guess, took care of business. Justin Fields just remains freakish, though.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, like, the chalkboard plays, right?
Yeah.
Fields is another one right now.
Yeah.
When there were multiple plays where he just kept it while the guy you normally read was there waiting for him, and he just outran him to the corner for 9 or 11 or 13 or whatever it was. It doesn't work every time, but there are plays where Fields just breaks the chalkboard defense.
A lot of them. Like, he's going to break Lamar Jackson's single-season rushing record for a quarterback.
And he's missed time.
Yeah. And at no point did anybody think when they were coming out of the draft that those are similar players. Like, Justin Fields was not thought to be in the Lamar Jackson camp of super freak when it comes to rushing ability, rushing threat. And he's about to shatter Lamar Jackson's all-time single-season rushing record for a quarterback. It's insane. He had a play in this game where he almost scored an absurd touchdown, but stepped just out of bounds at like the 5-yard line or whatever. Like, his performance was just so insane from that rushing standpoint. And like, he makes a play, and then Velus Jones fumbles a ball, and even the commentary was like, "That's the Chicago Bears right now." Is Justin Fields makes a few freaky things happen, somebody else gets a chance, makes a mess of it. Like, that's Chicago right now.
It's such a fascinating box score when you look at both teams, because I tweeted out a few weeks back the quarterbacks who had the most carries in a game this year, and it was all Hurts and Fields. And there was so many games where both of them had 15 to 20 carries in a game. That was this one, right? Hurts had 17, Fields had 15. There's no other teams in the NFL besides the Ravens who rely on their quarterbacks as runners now as much as the Eagles and the Bears. And it does change the game a little bit. Hurts had 3 touchdowns in here, right? And the whole QB sneak game. And then it's like you take away the double cheek push and we just go B gap or C gap, right? That little cat and mouse game at the line of scrimmage, I think you oversimplify it sometimes where it's just like, hey, we found the cheat code. It's QB sneaks. But there is a skill and art to QB sneaks, and the Eagles have done that and then expanded off of it. And look, they're 13-1 for many reasons. And I reiterate it here every week. They're 13-1 because they're good at a lot of different things. And if one thing fails, something else will pick them up. And in this particular game, it was a combination of two receivers. It was all A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They had all but, 21. Why did Miles Sanders get negative 13 receiving yards? They had all but 8 of the Eagles' receiving yards, right? So they over 300 between the two of them in the whole deal. It was the two receivers, and then the short yardage running game led by Jalen Hurts, right? Pass rush is still good and all that stuff, but the Eagles have just so many ways to beat you that even in a game where it's like, hey, they should be dominating the Bears, you still have to find a way to win, right? You have the Chiefs and the Texans going to overtime. You have crazy stuff that happens. The Eagles always find a way to win, and this week it was the other thing, too, I just want to say, Hurts having the 2 interceptions, one of them maybe not his fault, but he bounced back really, really well. I think just Hurts' mental toughness in this one. Cold game, didn't go well early, and he starts dropping in incredible deep balls to A.J. Brown, and he just kept bouncing back from what looked like a rough game. I thought that was really impressive, too. Another championship caliber type of game for the Eagles finding a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, they look good again. The late score by Chicago kind of undid what was, I think, a more comfortable win than that, maybe.
Plus the cover.
Yeah, that too. Again, why I just pick the opposite of what you do? Why would I ever agree with you? Poor Tevin Jenkins gets carted off after 4 snaps for Chicago. Doesn't sound like it's as bad as it looked at the time. But that was a big blow to Chicago's offensive line that's been vastly improved over the course of the season. They still held up okay. Cody Whitehair got destroyed a little bit. Alex Leatherwood came in at times at right tackle. Gave up basically a pressure every other snap, pass blocking.
The Eagles sacked Fields 6 times.
Hassan Reddick had an incredible game. But the idea that, look, Alex Leatherwood as a reclamation project kicked the tires. Hey, this team cast him off after a very short period of time. Let's have a look. Perfect sense. Based off this very small amount of evidence, doesn't appear like it's improved any one iota. I think that guy is just a disaster so far.
Philly, for whatever reason, Cody Whitehair, the left side of the Bears line, could not handle Philly's.
Hargrave.
Well, Philly's stunts, really, too. Hargrave and whoever else was looping around just kept. Those were 2 or 3 of their sacks came on that. Another one came on a screen. One was on the tight end from a Bears perspective. But the Eagles pass rush is relentless, and they did a great job there yesterday. So another story of Fields in a game that the Bears probably shouldn't be in. Fields kind of keeping them in it. He's not perfect, but the potential's through the roof, man. When we joked about Dan Orlovsky saying Justin Fields is the most valuable player in the NFL, I could see that in the future, right? Because Fields was a more polished passer than he's shown this season.
Well, yeah.
So he has this passing ability that he hasn't necessarily tapped into, and then he's as effective as Lamar Jackson as a runner. That was unexpected.
It's also remember who he's throwing to now.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So right now we've seen this incredible growth in Justin Fields as an athlete, as a threat, as just a weapon, as the offense. But he's still throwing to Cole Kmet, Dante Pettis, guys that have no business being high-end receivers. As soon as you get him a couple of those, think what that can do.
Yes.
I mean, even so, Devontae Smith would be the best receiver on the Bears roster by a mile. And it wasn't until the Eagles got A.J. Brown that we started to see this giant leap forward in Jalen Hurts. So Fields is 2 giant steps behind that. So, of course, he's not going to look like the best passer in the NFL or even a particularly great passer because the guy has nobody to work with. And that doesn't just manifest in, what they do when the ball arrives. It changes the picture you're looking at. So you can't just say, well, if you had better receivers, they'd be making more plays at the end of it, making him look better. No, the fact that he doesn't have any receivers that are any good, it changes everything he's doing from a passing standpoint.
Yeah, they'd be open.
Right, exactly. It affects what he's looking at, which affects the decisions he's making. It changes the entire dynamic of Justin Fields as a quarterback. So the fact that we've seen he's this good already with effectively no viable receivers, it really does it just raises the prospect of what he can become if they actually find him some help.
The 3-11 Bears they could be the Lions or Jaguars next year.
Yeah.
Competing for a playoff spot at this point if they make the right offseason moves. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Bears do this offseason. All right, let's jump to Sunday Night Football because that was a meaningful game at least, and then we'll fly through the rest. Giants 20, Washington 12. A little bit of controversy at the end of this one with some officiating stuff and everything.
Yeah.
Do you like it or no?
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like at the point where Taylor Heineke threw the ball to a cornerback who dropped it in the end zone, I'm like, you know what? At the end, like I don't care anymore if he gets screwed because he's already been bailed out by more luck than you can imagine in that play. So anything that offsets that just puts you back to even. You know?
You're looking at it from an evaluation perspective, though.
No, not even that. Just from a justice standpoint.
No, it's not justice.
It is
Giants
justice.
Dropped it.
He threw it at a cornerback. At that point, he no longer deserves to win the game.
It's not him, though. It's both teams. Listen, I am with you in like we think of this from like a grading perspective and a PFF perspective and all that stuff. Through that perspective, this was the most Taylor Heineke game ever, right? He puts the ball on the ground, makes a couple big throws to get them back into it, threw a great ball up the seam or up the sideline to get into it. Nice little touchdown to Jahan Dotson early on. And then when they're getting into it felt like they were just Heineke was going to get bailed out, right? He throws the ball to the corner. You're right. Like that's a terrible play in our Taylor Heineke evaluation. But in the grand scheme of like the football game, the Giants should have just caught it and it would have been over. But they didn't, and it did feel like the Commanders were going to, very Heineke would be to get the touchdown, the 2-point conversion, go to overtime again. But instead, Terry McLaurin didn't line up on the line of scrimmage.
Maybe.
Well, he definitely was too far back.
Yeah.
But he checked in twice.
Yes.
With the ref. And the ref didn't do anything.
Well, no, the ref did things. So that's the thing. Like he goes out and when you go out and you line up, you either kind of point to the line or you point back to say you're off the line and you look to the guy on the side who tells you effectively, yeah, no, you're on or no, you got to move up. So when he looks, he checks in with that guy twice and the guy is giving him some kind of hand signal, but it's difficult to see what it is or what he's telling him. So maybe that guy is telling him, you're not on the line.
Could have been talking to someone else, too.
No, I think he was pretty clear. He was talking to McLaurin. But he could have been saying, you're not on, you need to move up. Keep coming, you're still off. On the other hand, he could easily have been saying, you're good, and then throwing the flag on him anyway. That feels less likely, but whatever. Anyway, my point being, I don't care about the Heineke evaluation. At the stage where you throw the ball to a cornerback in the end zone, your team deserves to lose the game. So the fact that it then happened a few plays later when the officials either didn't give you a call or not, who cares? You should have lost already. It should have been over. The fact that they didn't catch the ball that was in his hands, you just got lucky. So now you got unlucky. It offsets to a wash. That's my point.
All right. The Ernie Adams of football, Ben Stockwell. Ernie Adams is of football, but our Ernie Adams. A little behind-the-scenes football genius, Ben Stockwell, says the ref signaled for McLaurin to move up, and then McLaurin just looked away.
I mean, it looked like he shuffled forwards.
I think he shuffled forward twice, didn't he? But not far enough.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like a good yard behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, but like those guys are always, like it's a bit iffy.
Anyway, so it was 20-12 at the time. Commanders obviously needed to score a touchdown and get the extra point. Heineke's final throw was knocked away, incomplete. The one thing I would say, if you're Taylor Heineke and you've got one last desperation play from like whatever it was, the 15, I would scramble up, not backwards. Like the further he gets, remember, you know how Josh Allen kind of like plays Madden, right? By the way, we've just compared every quarterback to Josh Allen in the show. So let's keep it going. Josh Allen can kind of like retreat and then has the velocity to kind of make up for the distance. Heineke was trying to do that. He gets the pass there, but it gets easy pass breakup. He needed to get closer to the line of scrimmage, make the throw shorter, not longer on the final play. Other story of this game, Saquon Barkley runs well. Giants, ran the ball pretty well up front. And Kayvon Thibodeau with a huge game for the Giants. He had a strip sack, recovery, touchdown. That was the difference in the game for the Giants. Neither offense really did well outside of a couple plays here and there, but it was Thibodeau making that play to get the Giants on the board early on that was ended up being the game changer.
Yeah, it was. Thibodeau had a great game. He's really kind of come on as the season's gone on. And certainly the longer the draft process went, the more there seemed to be a giant distance in a lot of people's minds between Kayvon Thibodeau and the other two guys, Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker at the top of the draft. You don't have to go back that far before Thibodeau was seen as the number one, like the guy that was going to go number one in the draft, the presumptive number one overall pick.
I mean, last
and then
year
for some reason, people just decided, not anymore.
Last year at this time, Kayvon Thibodeau
was the number one pick.
Was the expected number one pick.
Yes.
Absolutely. Aiden Hutchinson did have a higher PFF grade. The Michigan was going to the college football playoff. But at this time last year, it was Thibodeau's spot to lose.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't locked in. I said this a million times during draft season. It wasn't as locked in as a Bosa or a Myles Garrett or a Chase Young. That's why there was debate and there was movement. But at this point last year, Kayvon Thibodeau was the number one overall pick. It's not like he fell that far. He ends up going number 5 overall, but he was the third edge defender off the board. Trayvon Walker at 1, Aiden Hutchinson at 2, and Kayvon Thibodeau at 5. I don't think there's – by the way, Aiden Hutchinson's playing just as well as Kayvon Thibodeau right now this season. They've both been a tick better than Trayvon Walker, right? There's no definitive winner among that trio, the first 3 edges coming off the board. But at the moment, Thibodeau, I think, probably has the slightly better grade above Hutchinson, and Walker well below that. It's not this complete revisionist history, but Thibodeau did go from he was going to be the number 1 pick to could he fall out of the top 10? How far is he going to fall? The Giants grabbed him at 5. And we mentioned on draft night, the Giants were probably thrilled that they got him and Evan Neal, 2 guys who at one point were presumptive number 1 overall picks, or at least in the conversation. And last night kind of showed it with the Giants, what they were getting with Thibodeau.
Yep. Saquon Barkley had a really good game, took over sort of in the fourth quarter when the Giants had like 6.5 minutes left, needed to try and chew some clock. And then Saquon just like hit a hole, then hit a spin move and was picking up like 10 yards every time he touched the ball. That was really impressive. Jahan Dotson had a great game, who hadn't had one for a while. Like, remember, he started the season looking amazing and then got injured, cooled off, became a much smaller part of the game plan. Had a really big game in this one, including the kind of signature play that he makes. Like, he's so good at the catch point. Again, for a guy that's not big, you know, there's this group of guys that are good at the catch point and it makes sense. Like George Pickens being really good at the catch point makes a lot of sense, right? The guy's huge. Yeah. Great hands. Like, he's got the frame for somebody that should be amazing at the catch point. And then you got people like Jahan Dotson, who are like 5'11 and 180 pounds, which makes less sense that he's amazing at the catch point. But he is. Like, he got that deep pass. Incredible play by him. When you see the replay of that, again, it shows you how freaky small the margins are for, like, good play versus disaster when you're a cornerback, which is why it's such a volatile position. Like, I forget who the corner was. Was it Pinnock on that play?
Yes.
Who's got, like, he's blanketed Jahan Dotson. He's all over him. He's looking for the ball. He sees it arrive. He's turned. He's trying to get it, and he swipes at it with his left hand, and it somehow doesn't connect. Like, the margin for him not hitting that ball must have been an inch or 2.
Yeah.
And not hitting it enables it to get through to Dotson, who's maneuvered himself to be able to catch the ball as it comes through. But, like, an inch the other way, and Pinnock knocks that away. Pass breakup, great play, like, awesome coverage. And just, like, not quite kidding it. It goes from, like, great play to you just gave up a bomb.
And that's why I thought it was, like, the most Heineke game ever, right? The turning point in the game, by the way, is Heineke fumbling on a drive that
on a sack
on a sack where a late review showed it, but it looked like Washington was going to drive and take the lead earlier in the game. But then Heineke leads the comeback with this jump ball to Dotson for a 61-yarder. Basically a jump ball where Dotson does the work, right? Then throws one to a corner that gets dropped. But, you know, it didn't end up happening at the end. Good job by the Giants, man. They're holding on to dear life in the NFC playoff picture. So the Giants are the number 6 seed. Washington still is the number 7 seed at 7-6-1, as I've mentioned. But we'll see what happens down the stretch here in the NFC. Lions are coming quick, man, at 7-7. Don't forget to check out the PFF app. All of Sam's great writing, all of our betting, fantasy advice, lots of good stuff. Better picks than I have. I know that. So go check out, download the PFF app right now. All right, Sam, there's 3 games to get to. We got 15 minutes.
Okay.
I don't have much to say about a bunch of them.
Oh,
right?
by the way, one last thing.
These are less relevant games.
One last thing in this last game. just to really extend. Why the hell is Fabian Moreau shadowing Terry McLaurin? It's happened twice now.
I don't know, man.
I mean, I understand you're kind of depleted in the secondary. It still doesn't feel like a great matchup. Would you not, try and take it away some other way schematically? Hey, Fabian.
We want Wink to play zone?
Go cover Terry McLaurin one-on-one all the
Wink
time.
to play zone?
Anything.
No.
Bracket coverage.
Wink ain't
just something other than...
Wink ain't playing no zone here, man. We're getting after it. All right, let's go. Pittsburgh 24, Carolina 16. Steelers are 6-8 now. Panthers fall to 5-9. Would have been tied atop the NFC South.
Yeah.
If they could have pulled this off.
They're picking number 8 in the draft right now, and they're a game out of first place in the division.
They still control their own destiny.
Yes.
Ish.
They win out.
Yes, if they win out.
They hit the playoffs.
They would be the team. Good win by the Steelers, man. They had a 21-play drive in there, ran the ball pretty effectively, and Trubisky played pretty well.
The team that leads the NFL in drives of 10 or more plays outdid themselves with a 21-play, 90-something yard drive.
Does that count for 2? Should
No.
count as 2. But yeah, the Steelers' run game. It wasn't, it was kind of like, it was the run game that got Jerome Bettis into the Hall of Fame. 3.6 yards per carry.
Well, it would be as a running back.
Touchdown. What?
It would be as a running back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to get into it for anything else.
Yeah, I'm just saying that was like old school Steelers football. This is like what the Steelers fans want. They want 24 carries for 86 yards from Najee Harris and 11 for 38 from Jalen Warren. That's what they want.
So Najee Harris had a good game, right?
He
He busted through 10 tackles, stiff arms a guy to hell on the way for a touchdown. Remember, we're a couple of weeks away from the entirety of Pittsburgh being like, Najee Harris sucks, bench him. Okay, look.
He's had 2 of his better games running in the
right.
last couple of weeks.
Why are you completely unable to understand the dynamics of how this works, right? You had a terrible run game because you had no offensive line. Drafting Najee Harris in the first round wasn't ever going to fix that. It didn't fix it. The run game was still bad because you still had no offensive line. Then you're like, well, Najee Harris actually looks really good, but it's somehow not working. And now he doesn't look good, bench him. It's still the same problem. The problem is you have no run blocking. Najee Harris is a good running back, and sometimes that's going to work. It's going to be enough. Sometimes it isn't. It's not the issue. The fundamental underlying problem here is that your offensive line does not run block particularly well. And yet the entire focus is always on Najee Harris.
Yeah, he's good.
He is. He's good. He had a good game.
They had a long carry of 10 with him. It's good. It's fine.
Right. 86 yards, 73 of which came after contact.
Trubisky hit George Pickens for a 38-yarder, another one where Pickens just plucks it out of the air. That was kind of jump ballish, too, where he's just winded, man.
It wasn't even jump. It was just stick your hands directly up above your head
saying
and pluck it out of the sky.
Throw perspective, it was a 50-50 ball. The Panthers couldn't get anything going on the ground. They finished with 16 carries for 21 yards. Steelers were awesome up front. And then Sam Darnold, a nice touchdown on a scramble to DJ Moore. For me, the difference in this game, though, a couple third down plays in the red zone by the Panthers where they ended up having to settle for field goals. They ran a 3rd and 8 draw, or 3rd and goal from the 8 draw to Darnold. I don't know if that was a read from Darnold. You get that a lot where you run an actual pass concept, and if you get the right look up front, you're just going to run up the middle. I don't recommend it on 3rd and goal from the 8, and it didn't work. And then there was another third down play where Darnold scrambled around forever, took a sack. But to me, that was the difference in the game. Steelers controlling the ball, but the Panthers had their opportunities and had to settle for field goals. Neither team is probably going to make the playoffs. Any other takeaways on this one? Steelers got up 21-7 and held on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, neither one of these teams is tremendously good, and the Steelers are a slightly better, not tremendously good team than the other.
Mike Tomlin keeps the 9-8 season.
Dude, if he comes out of this season without a losing season again,
there's potential
it is crazy.
There is potential there. All right, that's all I have on that. I'm sorry. I mean, listen to the other stuff. There's more exciting things that happen around the NFL. There was some story here in the Atlanta-New Orleans game. Desmond Ridder's first start. Saints win 21-18. They're all 5-9 now, right?
Everybody.
Saints, Falcons, and Panthers are all 5-9. Not nearly as good as the powerhouse Bucs at 6-8.
Commanding one-game lead.
Saints win. Created some big plays early on. Another smooth game for Andy Dalton. Big plays from Taysom Hill. You say the guy's name that had the touchdown.
What the hell is his name? Rashid Shaheed.
You said Scott Hansen was struggling with it a little bit?
Well, his name, it's like a speed bump. You can't, I don't think, say it quickly the way you say everything else. Like every time Scott Hansen mentions his name
Rashid
on Red
Shaheed.
Zone, he slows down, as if it's, I got to consciously say this and not screw it up. The big touchdown to Rashid Shaheed.
My guy, my Red Zone guy, Andrew Siciliano, he doesn't have any issues.
It's silly. I'm just saying it's a weirdly, seems to be a difficult name to just smooth on, you can't just Andy Dalton that thing. You gotta be careful. You gotta pick your steps.
Pretty impressive that the Saints have been able to uncover another big play receiver like Shaheed, like they did with Deontay Hardy. What was he before?
Harris.
Deontay Harris, right? But like this is like my favorite thing in the world, right? That number 4 receiver that's this deep, legitimate deep ball threat that's going to create a 68-yard touchdown once every couple of weeks for you.
The Saints also seem to be bizarrely good at uncovering one-dimensional deep threat receivers. Like for years, like Devery Henderson, Robert Meacham, Deontay Hardy, Harris. Like they seem to find these guys that can only really do the deep threat thing, but they get them all the time. Like Ted Ginn, they always get it. It doesn't matter where they get him from. Like Meacham, wasn't he a first or a second round pick? Ginn was like a failed, first round pick. They just find these guys from anywhere and always have that designated deep threat.
It is impressive. The Falcons' run game kept them in it. Tyler Algier had 139. Cordero Patterson had 52 yards. Desmond Ridder, per my prediction, I didn't get much right other than he's not going to be a part of the designed run game all that much. There was only one designed run there. He did have 38 yards on the ground, mostly through scrambles. Ridder had some issues, some ups and downs, some really bad passes in there, some on-time, effective ones. Drake London was getting open over the middle on in-breakers quite a bit. But as the Falcons, they were down, 21-10. They did get within 3. Drake London fumble just outside of 2 minutes, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, so this was a tough game, I think, for Ridder because very quickly the game script got out of control. Like the Saints scored 7-0. Like immediately Ridder's at a 3rd and 9 on the next drive. Then they're up 14-0. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, the most run-heavy offense in the NFL with a new quarterback, a rookie quarterback, is all of a sudden facing a game script situation where you're 2 scores down and needing to kind of chase it. That's pretty rough.
I did go through the film pretty quickly. There was a lot. The Saints defense, I always describe them as championship caliber. They played good tight man coverage. There was not a ton of open windows. Like London, outside of Drake London, who again in breakers over and over and over again did a great job on those plays, on those routes. There was not a lot there for Ridder. Right. A lot of tight man coverage.
So they kept talking about on the broadcast that like no matter the situation, because they put him in this ugly situation, they didn't go like pass heavy and completely change the offense. They kept running the ball, and like guys like Algier were making plays. And they kept talking about like, oh, this is the faith they have in Tyler Algier to pick up these like 3rd and 9 or whatever. It's like, okay, the other way of looking at that is this is the lack of faith they have in Desmond Ridder
right.
to even attempt to pass in this situation. Like, that cuts both ways. Now, that being said, late in the game, 2 minutes, got to have it 4th down. Ridder completes a pass to London, who then fumbles it away.
Right.
Like, he did make a couple of plays. I do think it's a little bit concerning that they went away from the quarterback as part of the run game so hard to the point where they brought in like Felipe Franks to run to do that on a play, and it didn't work. I understand that Desmond Ridder is not Marcus Mariota, but I think he's close enough that you don't have to junk that stuff from the game plan because it's a pretty important part of what you've been doing.
I told you they want to develop. I know the division is winnable for all these teams still, except maybe the Saints, but the Falcons want to see what Ridder can do as a passer. Develop him as a passer.
I also think that
plus his skill set, like he was getting rid of the ball quickly and he was doing a nice job as far as like making the right throws. He was just off from an accuracy standpoint on a bunch, and I said, there were not a ton of open windows there.
I still think the point that you made is absurd, and that doing that does not diminish anything he could do as a passer. Why can't the Falcons stop Taysom Hill? Like Taysom Hill's half of his career is built off just eviscerating the Atlanta Falcons defense.
It's like Derrick Henry in division games.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry against the Jags and the Texans. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Andy Dalton to Juwan Johnson was cooking in the game as well.
Yes. Juwan Johnson's legit. Another this is why the Saints don't make any sense, right? Like if you said, hey, in this season where you don't really have a tight end and you have a good-looking receiving core, and we're going to add this incredible deep threat to you in Shaheed, and Juwan Johnson's actually going to be one of the sneaky best receiving tight ends in the NFL this year, wouldn't you think the Saints would be good? I mean, with the other pieces that they have, the fact that their defense is solid, and Dalton's playing well, and Kamara's back, like none of it makes sense.
Forget everything else. If you just told somebody at the end of before this season, if you just said the Saints are going to get Andy Dalton for basically the whole year, and he's going to have an 85 passing grade, you're like, oh, the Saints are going to the Super Bowl. Like they're a legit playoff contender at that point. And Andy Dalton's playing really well week after week after week. And they're not. Everybody else is kind of letting them down, at least mostly. I mean, this was an indication of the games where they actually do show up more.
All right. I think that's all.
Still has not a bad game, by the way, Andy Dalton. Like however many games that is this year. Just time after time after time, just 70-plus every week. It's kind of insane.
The Dalton coaster has become just a country road, huh?
It's just like it's like a monorail. Just a
it's Wyoming.
Slow glide across a perfectly smooth surface.
Denver Broncos 24, Arizona Cardinals 15. I don't want to lie to our audience.
Okay.
I didn't watch much of this game. I purposely didn't.
So the game starts off as Colt McCoy versus Brett Rippon and becomes Trace McSorley against Brett Rippon.
Yeah, Colt McCoy left with a concussion. He had a bad interception in there. McSorley picked off twice. Brett Rippon got sacked 7 times by the Cardinals defense. It was just ugly all around. But Denver got their running game going. Latavius Murray ran extremely well. And Broncos got the win to move to 4-10.
Yeah. So you look at this and you're like, okay, 2 teams, both without their quarterback, both desperately struggling on offense. They're generally bad. The Cardinals now join the Broncos as being eliminated this season. They'll be with Wednesday autopsy for the Cardinals season. But what happened in this game is when you the offense on both sides sucks. You're down quarterbacks. You have nothing going for you. Well, now all of a sudden defense matters more. And Denver actually has a really good defense, as we've seen so far this season. So early in the game, Arizona's defense was showing up. J.J. Watt was making a few plays. But as the game wore on, the Denver defense is just better. So they just caused significantly more problems for Arizona's offense. And J.J. Watt on his own, and Watt had a really good game, probably his best game for a long time, wasn't enough. The Cardinals defense just isn't as good. And therefore, Denver was able to get it done. That's basically it. In a game of bad teams with terrible offense, the team with the best defense won.
Yeah, in a game, in a weekend with the best comeback in NFL history and the Raiders-Patriots debacle, depending on which side you're on, all that stuff, Denver won 24-15. That's my recap.
Yeah, I mean, so this is today's NFL is that defense is great, but it's not it just doesn't matter if your offense stinks. The Denver Broncos are proof perfect of that this season. If your defense, as amazing as it is, if your offense isn't capable of scoring, you're not going to win games anymore. You can't do a 2000 Ravens anime. The league just doesn't work that way.
Well, I'll say this. Going forward with the way Patrick Surtain, he had another big game, the way he's playing, and just everything that we've seen from the Broncos defense, it doesn't mean that they're going to be the best defense next year, or even top 3, but they have the ability to play that championship level defense, right? So that you're going into the offseason in Denver saying, we've got some incredible pieces, coming off of a really good season on that side of the ball. Let's fix this offense. I think you can at least come into this offseason if you're Denver saying, figure out Russ and getting him right and what we're going to do there. And if we can do that, if we can figure that out, they're right back in it. As ugly as this 4-10 season has been for the Broncos, they're also not that far away from being right back into contention, I don't think. If they could I mean, depending on if Russ is actually cooked or if there's something to salvage there. I'm guessing there's something to salvage, right? We don't want to lean too much into hard stop narratives, right? Russ will never be the same again. Maybe it's true, but I feel like Denver's got something to salvage. Arizona, for me, there's just not a lot of takeaways generally from this game, which is why I'm half joking, like it doesn't matter. It's not a lot of takeaways, right? Like Arizona's season's done, Denver's season's done. We'll do the autopsy on Wednesday for Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's it, 9:30. That's every game, right? Did I miss anything?
Nailed it. Probably.
I did not.
No, I meant nailed it probably.
Oh, nailed it probably. I thought you meant probably like I missed a game.
I mean, you could have done that as well. Like the way you're picking this year, anything's possible. Rams-Packers.
Draft model's good, though.
Tonight.
Rams-Packers, yeah. Enjoy the game tonight. Baker and Aaron Rodgers and whatever else is going to happen.
The chance to go, what, 3-12? No, 3-13.
I'm 3-11 at the moment.
3-11.
Right. No, it's 16 games. Yeah, I'm 3-12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go 3-13.
231. People would kill to hit 231.
I'm just imagine if you just threw down money on the opposite of that.
I have a higher AAA batting average than that hit rate.
Like I don't know what would your how many units would you be up? Just the
plethora.
Just the most powerful betting edge in the world today is picking against you.
Whatever.
And people are just leaving that on the table every week, including me, by the way. Who I had a pretty good week, but every time I agreed with you, I got it wrong.
Yeah, but it made sense at the time, didn't it?
Yeah, but I should have known better. Like I have the most powerful betting edge in the world, sitting across the table from me, and I'm just ignoring it.
I'm trying to de-emphasize the focus on my picks here, and you're just bringing it back in.
Well, you can instead tell people about the charity.
Oh, tell them about the charity. I'm going to do some rugby drills. If we can get to $2,000, Meals on Wheels. I'm going to do, what am I doing, rugby drills? I want to do them like can I get it like with the Irish team? They going to come over here anytime soon?
No.
They don't come here?
No. They're busy in a season.
Oh, that's all right. Well, I'm going to do some I'm going to do some rugby drills.
But there you go. It's my pin tweet at PFF_Sam. We've already got $150 raised. Thank you to everybody that's donated so far. Will also be in the description of this podcast. Raising money for a good cause, Meals on Wheels America, and when we raise the $2,000, professional rugby players are going to send us video evidence of them completing some fairly basic rugby skills, and then we're going to show you those videos and see if you can do them.
I'm ready.
As a former professional athlete, you would think you'd be able to have this no problem.
What would be the best way to train for this? Do I need some level of endurance? Speed,
no, nothing here is going to require stamina, just skill.
Skill?
Yeah.
Okay.
So kicking a ball. Can you kick a rugby ball?
I don't know.
Well, that would be a start.
What if I'm a natural? I played pickup cricket with Neil. I was pretty good at that.
Well, there you go. See? I mean, look, you can't.
No, I'm not really good at kicking stuff.
You can't buy the baseline of being a former professional athlete. You know, you start off on third base here.
Yeah, maybe. I'm out. I've cashed out. Everyone else has too. It's a good show. Look at this. Wow.
That's disturbing Photoshop right there.
That's not Photoshop. That's real.
Oh, okay.
When
did we do that?
We reenacted it this weekend.
Feels like the guy on the right needs to be somebody as well. Who can we make that into?
Who would I be stiff arming? Oh, stiff arming picks. Wins. I'm stiff arming good picks.
Yeah.
Can we make that happen, Tyler? I'm stiff arming money. Oh, that's great. No images of Elf, please. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday for our midweek show. See you then.